Hello. Oops, wrong one. Boom. Hello. Good afternoon, and welcome back to another one of my video versions of my Substack essays where I read it live on YouTube and talk with the chat about some of the ideas in the piece and reactions to the piece. I think for this one will be really useful, and then we also talk about fuck all in general. If you're watching live on YouTube, hello, welcome, good afternoon / whatever time zone you're in. And if you're watching the VOD afterward, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts or reactions to stuff, please leave comments because it's really so cool to see people visit stuff after the fact. It's really fun. Drudge Room says, okay, hair. Look at this shit, right? My hair is getting so long. I'm so happy with it. I'm so fucking pleased. And this is no cuts. Like I had like buzzed it the way I was buzzing it for myself for years and unable to break out of. And I just have let it go. And it's I think, I thank the Zoomers for bringing a mullety fashion that kind of actually slays back, and like shagginess back, like an unkempt, not overly manicured shagginess. I think I was really trapped in that millennial core, like, like buzzing the sides, taper fades. I mean, all that stuff's great, but like it's just too manicured for me, and then I worry too much about it being perfect, and it never is perfect, and so then I cut it, and then it, then one end's uneven, and then you're cutting the other side, and then you're bald again. I was kind of stuck doing that for like 4 years, but the shagginess is really going. So thank you. Is that Sasha? I'm pretty sure. Drudge Worm. Yeah. Thanks for the love. Fellow it's I think I saw on your Tumblr, which is awesome. I don't think I knew that before, but hello everyone. Artistic Bum says the hair is so good I know it was a struggle to let it grow out. Yeah, it was hard until it was suddenly easy. But for years I was in that loop of like fucking it up. But like the norms have changed now also too. Like just like kind of shaggy hair is like so normal to see and cool, and I'm really liking it. I'm gonna basically just take a picture of my hair to the hair store when I need to get more hair done, because I've never, like, it's hair is such a dysphoria thing, right, for so many people in so many ways, like whether it's losing hair, thinning hair, hair just not looking like how you think of yourself, feeling like you don't have control over your hair, especially when you're young. Like it was such a dysphoric thing for a while, but this is like the most happy with my hair I've ever fucking been. So yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it for hair. It's crew. Yes, hello Annika. Good to see you. So glad you're here. So today we're talking about misogyny in the media and in our political criticisms. We're gonna dilly-dally a little bit before we get into it because I have a little fun piece from Danny Lavery that I want to read, that I read this morning from Substack and was just so delighted by, that I want to read through it. But first, we are going to be talking about misogyny in the media today, and how a lot of criticisms of political figures, public figures, even when it's meant to be a critique about the impact that somebody has on the culture or political policies that they've enacted, we veer into a lot of misogyny if it's a woman doing it, and how damaging that is, with a specific focus on discussions about potential eating disorders and celebrities that seem concerningly thin to people, as if you can always tell what an eating disorder looks like. That's really not the majority of cases. And also criticisms of things like Mar-a-Lago face, and overly done plastic surgery, and how damaging focusing on that, and like even having that belief that like somebody exercising body autonomy and accessing cosmetic procedures is somehow disgusting, that how that damages things politically for trans people and disabled people, no matter who you're making your target. So we're gonna be talking about that stuff. That's all gonna be terribly fun. But my little opening question while we were on the hold screen was, what's an early memory you have of noticing misogyny in media? Artistic Bum says, first thing that comes to mind is when the guys in Miss Congeniality are using that computer program to try outfits on female agents to pick one to go undercover. I have watched that movie a lot, so I know exactly what you're talking about. They like have like a magic computer that can like undress, or I guess already has footage of all of their like FBI agents' bodies and what they would look like in like sexy woman costumes, and so they can just tell that Sandra Bullock, despite being a nasty lady with unbrushed hair who picks her teeth with a steak knife, ooh, so disgusting. They can tell using the magic of computer technology that she actually has a banging bod and would look really good in a like a beauty pageant outfit. Uh, oh, that movie, it's so fun, and also like it's criticizing certain misogynies and not others, right? Like it's criticizing and mocking beauty pageant culture and superficiality, but it's still ultimately mostly doing it from a pretty misogynistic place, right? Like Sandra Bullock's character is the one that's like talking some sense into these silly, frivolous, eating disordered women, because she's a cool girl who can fire a gun and she'll eat pizza and drink beer, but she's still really thin. So she's that dream. And we'll talk about that when we get into the piece, the dream, the ideal woman. It's kind of like the cool girl monologue from Gone Girl, that she still lines up with the hegemonic beauty ideal. Like the cool girl, the ideal woman is thin, definitely not plus sized, right? And aligns with beauty standards, but she does so in a way that never makes you feel bad about the fact that you demand it of her, right? Like she's just effortlessly thin. Like she has to make a performance of like how she'll eat anything, she'll go anywhere with you. She's never going to complain. She's never going to be visibly unwell, even though the body standards that we have for people, if most people were to even try to line up to those body standards, they would not be well physically. But we don't want to see the unwellness because that's an inconvenience. That's a demand that a woman is making of us. And so we punish that, right? So that's all over Miss Congeniality. I think about some of the older beauty pageant, the woman running the beauty pageant in Miss Congeniality, who ends up being kind of the main big bad of the film. She is an older beautiful woman who is not coping well with aging out of the beauty pageant scene, and that is the villainy. That's the scary thing, right? Like we're gonna make this movie where we're ogling at all of these beautiful women and their bodies a ton, and then we are going to, in the movie, attack and lampoon a woman who is a little too wrapped up in the fact that she used to be beautiful and that she used to be a part of this culture and like providing this entertainment. And isn't she so vain? It's really something. It's just like that post about like the Vanitas painting, that Tumblr portrait that like you paint a beautiful woman because you want to see her body, but then you excoriate her for enjoying that beauty by having her hold a mirror in the painting and calling it vanitas or whatever, calling it vanity. Uh, Shit sucks. Women. People are mean to women. Have you heard? I'm literally like the dude who did a couple of psychedelics and now can empathize with women. Like, uh, like I was on acid at Furfest crying about misogyny being real, which I did know before, but it's, I like being a little bit more visibly and mentally woman aligned, not actually woman aligned, but like, I don't identify as a woman, but like, it's like, no, those are my girlies, like it makes it more emotionally real. I don't know. Shit hurts. Artistic Bum says, first feminist moment that comes to mind is Mrs. Claus singing "Anyone Can Be Santa" in the year without a Santa Claus. That's really charming because that's a really old stop motion animation movie. I want to say from like the 70s or something. So that's maybe older. So that's really charming that like her saying anyone, regardless of gender, can be a Santa was like this feminist moment for you. That's so sweet. Transpeak says, oh, hi, Birdie Bits. Welcome. Hello. Transpeak says, I remember that Pretty Woman was supposed to be a fun, romantic, and rags to riches story, but it's all about exploitation and coercive control and standards placed on women. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's Pygmalion, right? Pretty Woman is explicitly a Pygmalion story. It's not Breakfast at Tiffany's, is it? Is that also what it is? That it's like a remake, basically, of Breakfast at Tiffany's, which itself is a remake of Pygmalion, which is the story of a artist, a sculptor who makes his ideal woman out of stone, and by loving her enough or by making her perfect enough, she becomes real. That's also what like Ruby Sparks is. Um, Shout out to Paul Dano's fruity ass. Um, and so that is like a very it's very objectifying, right? It's I'm going to make this woman in my idealized image of what a woman should be and teach her how to and then just like a lot of like, oh, she doesn't know how to act in polite society. I'm gonna teach her how. That movie was playing at Big Chicks, this gay bar here in town, a couple months ago, and I was kind of half watching it, and there it does so much with just sex work that's so weird too. Like it's fantasy 90s sex work. I want to rewatch it more closely because I like the fashion, I like the style, I like the vibe, and that era is just on that cusp of like movies that I saw young, but I don't always consciously remember, and so it's really nice to kind of dig into it and see like, oh, this is some of the programming that we were all absorbing at that time if we were alive. Dagger Moss says, I remember old Disney websites with games and virtual media for the Disney Princesses franchise, and being frustrated that Mulan had barely had any content. Least capitalistically profit-driven demand, I guess. Yeah, yeah. There's much to be said about how Disney categorizes who's a princess and who's not in their marketing. I remember as a kid really overanalyzing that and being like, is this person in the monarchy? Why does this person count as a princess and why does this person not? Like, and I hated that all the stuff they had of Mulan was of her at the end of the movie in her detransition drag, I guess. I'm one to talk now, but like they didn't have anything of Ping, of Mulan in like her butch stuff, like almost at all. And they didn't have much. Like they had some of her, they had dolls of her in the matchmaking ceremony with the makeup and the elaborate gown. When that is like explicitly a dysphoric time for her and she's not happy, and that's the whole point of the fucking movie, is that she doesn't want to take on that particular type of like womanhood role. And doesn't want it, and they just market that doll, and think that kids want to play with it. And as a kid, I just was so incensed by that it's like, why would I want to play out Mulan's worst time? Like I want to play out her being a boy and climbing up things. Like there were some dolls of it, but like yeah, it was mostly the very beginning and then her like her detransition track. So that was weird. Annika says new key. No, I just moved it. Is that what you're talking about? This guy? My Vitali Iridescent. I moved it to the bottom side a while ago because I was flagging on the wrong side. Because I think people do interpret it as kinky, even though it's mostly just a cool symbol to me and a symbol of like you can free yourself at any time. You choose to surrender, but you hold the key or whatever. Like it's not a key to anybody's chastity cage or anything, though people always ask that. Artistic Bum says, I got a blizzard for my B-Day yesterday. Thankful because we had a bunch of snow before Christmas, but it melted. Oh, happy birthday, Artistic Bum. Lovely. We got some snow last night. I woke up to hearing it being scraped outside and really had a sense of how much time had passed while I was asleep. Still love that movie, Miss Congeniality, mainly because I'm gay for Sandy. Is Sandy the blonde girl? The ditzy, kind of fun. My favorite type of date would be like March 13th or whatever. That girl. Sasha says, not my very earliest memory of misogyny in media, but one was noticing how there's like no women in The Hobbit when I was 9. Oh yeah, stuff like that is really it's so hard to even get into media where there's no girlies. Like I'm trying to think. Like I was a Star Wars kid, and I liked like Yoda and like creatures that like Jawas and stuff like that. Like, but other than that, almost always needed some kind of girly pop. Somebody who's one of the girlies, you know what I mean? Like I only like Dragon Ball Z when like Gohan was like a baby who was like crying all the time. You know, like somebody needed to be at least a little faggy or something, or sensitive. Um, Obviously, there's like endless examples of media from our youths. plural youths, because I know we're not all the same age in here, but throughout time, lots of media where there's no girlies. Stabby Vale, welcome. First time getting to join one of these live. Apologies if I'm not entirely sure what the chat etiquette is. Is it fine to comment as a rando? Absolutely. Yes, feel free to comment as a rando. As you can see, there's a delay, so I'm going to be slow in responding to stuff. I don't necessarily respond to everything. You can also interact with other people in the chat. Side talk, crosstalk is fine. We've never really had a problem with people like having a whole ass like separate like flame war in the chat. Like I wouldn't want that, but like you can reply to each other and talk. We also have a Discord server, so if you end up liking the conversation and liking the people, you can join the Piscord, and we have people on there talking about crafting, biohacking, DIYing their HRT, sharing things they've made, sharing outfit selfies, complaining about bad takes they read online. It's just a little, I think I can actually say, community. I'm really not at the helm of it. People who just come here and have done the streams that me and Maddie have done in the past, and will do again, have made it into a really nice community. So yeah, participate. It is what you make it. That's all that community ever is. It is what you make it, what you do, and the reason I do it live is because people have a lot of fun, interesting stuff to add. And so if you say anything that's like out of line or something, we'll let you know. But like that's usually people who are like who are here to be assholes. Like there have really not been. You can kind of talk. I would say almost as much as you want, because I know some of us be hyperlexic in the club, but so far never been an issue. Like some people talk a lot, some people talk a little, some people lurk. It's all good. Welcome. Sasha says, I had certainly noticed things early on, like how in all the old Bollywood films, the female leads are always in traditional clothing, whereas male leads got to wear modern or Western clothes, i.e. the pressure to be traditional, modest, be representative, national, and nationalist identity as a woman. That is such an interesting thing that for you to bring up. Like, I'm so glad you did, because there is this weird pressure in a lot of different cultures for women to be the maintainer of the cultural traditions. And they're like seen as the reproducer of society through children and through the family. And so it's women who have to wear the more traditional clothing or maintain more traditional like modesty standards or beauty standards. It's the women who have to maintain the recipes, the holiday traditions, to raise kids in a particular way. Whereas for men, there is more of a pressure to assimilate for like capitalist reasons, but also more freedom to kind of do whatever. And the weird thing is that it's in, at least, well, this is maybe a uniquely American thing. You can tell me, everyone else. It's kind of reversed with names. That people are more experimental with female names, whereas men are expected to have these more traditional, respectable names that have been used forever more often. That's like the one exception I can think of. But yeah, misogyny be hitting. Transpeak says, I find it interesting that in Tolkien, women dwarves are described as being nearly indistinguishable from men dwarves, yet you still never see them. It's so annoying. Like, they could have really cooked with that. They could have really gone off, and they just missed opportunity. I don't know if that's true in both the books and, you said Tolkien, so it sounds like both the books and the films. I hate shit like that, where there's room for, or like Star Trek, where I think even in the original series they talk about, or Gene Roddenberry had like in the book for like the rules of the world, that anybody could wear any gender of uniform. But aside from like one or two extras, I think in the original series, you never really see like a man wearing the go-go dress. And of course, it's all to do with censors and standards and advertisers at the time. But it's like, damn, you created this possibility for things to be way more gender expansive and feminist, and then you just didn't do it. You just couldn't actually follow through on it, which is so sad. Like, we have these ideals and we can't live up to them sometimes. Dagger Moss says, the cool girl trope has haunted so much of my life. Ugh, yeah. Ugh, Gone Girl is so fucking good. She did nothing wrong. That monologue is so good. And I don't know, it's something that I haven't seen specifically talked about as much in the logic of uh, misogyny and like why it's part of the logic of misogyny in like at least mainstream American culture, that like a woman has to meet the standards, but she also has to make meeting the standards look easy. And it's something that I've talked about in my piece about not all girls are expected to be feminine, how the norms for like middle class and lower, especially lower, like working class and lower middle class and poor women, you know, where I come from is not to have this like elaborate grooming ritual or wear dresses. Like you have to be practical. You like a woman's role in the world is it's a labor role. It's reproductive labor, and then it's also things like fucking mucking out the barn or whatever, fixing the cars. Like where I'm from, women are supposed to be capable. Like they are supposed to try to be thin and beautiful and all of these things, but they're supposed to make it really effortless and not ever get in the way of them being useful to people. That's the main thing. And being the cool girl, being able to run lots of things socially and emotionally for people, but to never show the brushstrokes, or to show that it's difficult, because then people would feel bad. Then the existing social order would be capable of being critiqued. Whereas if it just magically happens quietly, no one will know. Birdie Bit says, "Oh, Disney is a good one and probably fits the theme. I remember me and people I knew having a critique like princess movies are bad because Ariel gives up her voice for a boy." Yeah, yeah. And Disney in years since has kind of tried to do these little commentaries and corrections for it that I think are obviously they're very like shallow, and they're just to make viewers, parents feel less bad about showing their kids Disney movies. But I think also it does this weird thing of like devaluing like that it is okay to want relationships or like love or to like care about things that are traditionally feminine coded, and that doesn't have to make somebody weak, and also it's okay to be weak. Like there's a lot of things there that are not great. It's just a very surface level correction. Oh, we got a little asshole in the chat. This must be where the Vax and Tylenol babies coalesce. Yeah, you came to the right place, buddy. Fucky guy. Let me put this person in a permanent timeout. How do I ban someone? Put user in timeout. Do 24 hours. Bye. Hello, Rune. Welcome. Glad you could make it. Banana Larry. Oh, we got a few little assholes in the chat. Let's ban these dummies. Goodbye. Okay, who else would like to be a mod? Because I think we need some more mods in the chat over here. Must be because I said something about misogyny in the video title, so it's attracting some fun people. Okay, who I'm gonna make a few people mods. If add as moderator, Artistic Bum. You are now a moderator. Sasha, I'm gonna make you a moderator. This is not an obligation. This is an option. Anybody else want to be a moderator? Annika, I'm going to make you a moderator too, if that's okay. Rune, if you want to. Oops. Oh, fuck. I didn't mean to pin that message from Transpeaks. I meant to make you a moderator. Add as a moderator, standard moderator. Rune, I'm going to make you a moderator too. No pressure, but many hands make light the work. So if you see somebody doing some fuckery, you can if you're not sure what else to do, you can just delete the message. You can put them in a 24-hour timeout. Anybody who have just made a mod, please feel free to do that. Thank you, and I'm sorry I did not see those messages. Isia Meow Q says, "Hi, hello, welcome. Thanks for joining." Artistic Bum says, "People criticize The Little Mermaid because Ariel gives up her voice, but she mainly does it to become human. Eric is just the tipping point. Also, she's just a kid who was manipulated by Ursula." That's what I'm talking about. Like, she wants to escape her life, and I think it's okay for somebody to see a person or a relationship as a part of that. Like, it's so our overcorrection for like sexist Disney media is so individualistic, because the kind of girl we get now is like a spunky girl who doesn't need a man and is tough and demands nothing. She's the cool girl basically, and she might just kind of happen into a romance, but she's not allowed to want it. She's not allowed to want kind of anything other than like triumph. And I don't think that's any kind of like feminist ideal that we should be working towards, as someone who believes in having more interdependent communities and things like that, and value systems that are not purely individualistic and accomplishment based, to say that like it's wrong to like make a choice because you have a crush on somebody. Like that's her exercising like sexual agency. Like she wants to get laid. She get she gives up her voice because she wants to like fuck this dude, and she wants to have a life out on the town doing this human thing and get away from her shitty dad. Like that's cool. Like all of those things are great. Like and like when it comes to like Eric and all of them, like she's not treated badly. Like it's not, there are things in there that are interesting and that are worth salvaging, I think. I don't know. In the modern telling, if we're talking about like the Hans Christian Andersen story, it's pretty bleak, because she can just never have a soul and she just has to suffer and he doesn't care about her and all of that. And also it's okay to have stories that aren't aspirational. Like I think kids can live with that. I think it's good for them to see people make complicated or bad choices too. So yeah, I the surface level critique of sexism and like Disney princess stuff kind of irks me. There was that great video that Lindsay Ellis made many years ago about how Beauty and the Beast, the Disney film, is not an example of Stockholm Syndrome. Very clearly, that the entire time Belle is aware of the power dynamics at play and asserts power in lots of different ways. And so it's just not accurate to call it a Stockholm Syndrome story. Also, Stockholm Syndrome isn't probably real. It was like an invention of the CIA. And so it's just like kind of a simplistic critique. So, oh, you remember the key being silver? No, the light must just be hitting it differently. It's iridescent, which is my favorite. I love oil slick stuff. It's from the river to the sea here, says Artistic Bum. That's right. Birdie Bit says, yeah, it elides really easily into romance is silly. Things women engage with are bad. If a man is in the movie, he must be the main agent, even if he doesn't do much. Yeah. Talking about Slave Leia in Star Wars. Lord Eelhorse says, The Thing is another film that has no women. Yep. Very true. Another retracted message. Thank you. Snow's melting where Sasha is. Yeah, we had some beautiful snow around Thanksgiving, and then it melted. We're having so much more snow this year than years past, which is so lovely. I like it. Dagger Moss is kind of talking about the Miss Male character trope, as Feminist Frequency used to call it. The girl version of a character is drawn with extraneous features like eyelashes and curves. Even when they're a non-human entity, like a lizard person, they have big old titties and nipples, even though they probably don't nurse. Though, as a furry, I will say, if you want to make your sharks have titties and your lizards have titties, I'm all for it. Savvyvale says the Discord sounds fun. I would probably enjoy an invite. Sure, yeah. Let me put that in the chat. So long as all of our haters and losers have left. So people with mod powers, if you want to do one last sweep while I'm grabbing the Discord link, that would be so poggers of you, because we don't want them joining the Discord. Invite to server. Copy invite link. And I'll put the invite link in the chat. And it's a really cool space. It's like as non-hierarchical as we can make it. Like obviously I'm still a mod, and there is power that comes with that. But and it being a space like related to stuff I do. But like for the most part, it's just the people in the chat hanging out, and I dip in every once in a while and say something weird and fuck off. The Thing is the woman. That's a big brain take. Artistic Bum. Stabby Vale says, my first clear memory of misogyny was that girls weren't allowed to play any of the like military characters in my school's 9th of May play. Like, no, I wanted to be a Soviet tank driver. Oh, that's so good. Um, I remember we had to do in like third grade, like you had to do a report on a president and dress up as them. And if you were a girl, you just had to dress up as their wife. And I chose William Henry Harrison because he died of giving a really, really long speech at his inauguration and got pneumonia and died shortly thereafter. And I was a very talky kid. And so I really thought that was cool. But then I had to dress up as his wife, who like helped create the Red Cross. So like there were cool things about it, but it really irked me that that you couldn't even be the president if you were a girl. Sasha says Tolkien doesn't really have any female dwarfs show up, named and active in the story. No. Stabby Vale says, sometimes I feel like a piece of media has to be all men because if there was even a single woman, she would be like, what are you doing? Stop it. Yeah. There's well, usually the people making that media do not know how women would behave, so it would be terrible. J Devon 9953 says, an interview with the author of Monstrous, very cool, read that this year, changed my whole perspective of fiction. She simply told a story where all the important people were women as an opposite of The Hobbit. Yeah. Sasha says Tolkien has a lot of contradictory politics going on as an upper-class white Englishman, a devout Catholic, very much a product of his time, but he's also clearly capable of empathy and showing that in his work. He has strong female characters like Eowyn, Galadriel, Aradel, Haleth, Luthien, who is based on his wife, but also half the time it feels like he forgets women exist. Or women are, in a similar way I described before, still in the role of guarding morality, reproducing culture, etc. He doesn't always let women be complicated or evil the way he does with men. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I remember people finding the like I am no man moment with Eowyn or however you pronounce it. People when those movies came out in the early 2000s that they thought it was so badass, and like it just kind of rang hollow to me because she was, and maybe this is my double standard, like she was like herself kind of this like all her relationships were defined by how she felt about men and being in love with men, and then she's kind of sidelined afterward, and it just didn't feel like the sleigh that others felt it to be. Like it was still cool, but I couldn't really get into it. But I was never a big Tolkien girly, so I was just kind of there for the ride with my friends who were like the type of girls with like the long hair to your ass and they're like throwing axes in their backyard. Like I was friends with those girls, often horse girls, often fantasy media girls, but I was not that particular girl. Thank you for modding, Trans Peaks and Artistic Bum. Sasha says Galadriel has seen a lot of gender going on, and she does have a lot of complex layers, but we don't get to see a lot of it. A lot of cool girl, strong female characters in media aren't written to fit the world of the play. In historical fiction, there's a lot of anachronisms present in how writers are afraid of the audience, afraid of writing something real, so she ends up being a flat character. Yes. I've seen that Tumblr post about that phenomenon. That if a woman was going to rebel against the standards of her time, she wouldn't say something like, women are equal, and so that's why I'm going to wear men's pants, like to be more likely to use the values of the time and say, isn't it modest how I'm wearing these men's clothing that actually cover me up more? And that's just an example, but like you see most people, they really don't completely think outside of the frame of their society. I saw that post and I like the critique. I think it's realistic for a lot of characters to be written that way, where they still have the values of the time. But I mean, like, we're all here and we're talking about things that run counter to the values of our time quite a bit. Like, there have always been people who have been that way, I think. So I think it is possible to have it written that way. But, like, then you have to really conceive of the person as, like, kind of a visionary or huge, like, societal outcast, that they're willing to do things that are really, really beyond the pale. And probably if even then, if you're making the argument to another person as a person from that time, you can't just say, well, I think women are equal, because you're just going to get like thrown in a sanitarium or something if you do that. So you're still going to use the like modesty argument or some kind of argument lined up with the values of the era, even if you really believe that like women are all equal and stuff like that, in a time where that would have sounded absurd to people. ACM Meow Q, yes, you can join the Piscord. The link's right there. Feel free to join. Introduce yourself. Look around. It is what you make it. Yeah. Yeah, having to dress up as a president's wife was very cursed. Aowen. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I'm caught up with the chat. And there was only 2 really bad spam messages. So that's good. Thanks, everybody who agreed to help mod. Sasha says, I still like the I am no man, you look upon a woman moment, but I agree with your assessment. And again, like, she has no relationship with other women. I hate that. Yeah, I can see why it's like a stirring moment, but it's like my dog Tolkien. You also created this world in this story where we haven't seen women like doing anything like this whole time. So like, why? I can't really congratulate you for giving me this girl boss moment. You know, I don't know. Even though it's okay, like obviously okay to create a world where sexism exists and reflects the values of the time. It just wasn't a sleigh for me. You know, it just didn't connect for me. But that's fine. Okay. So thank you everyone for your great contributions. Before we dive into reading the piece itself, I just want to share this really fun Danny Lavery piece. What every nonfiction book is called now. Oh, The Body Pillow. Yes. Hold on. Oop, wrong way. Steffi the Deer. And she is a real deer furry with a fursuit, and there's a lot of great porn of her taking loads up the ass at like the Golden Gate Bridge Park and stuff like that. So if you want to see a cute, very like big-eyed deer fursuiter getting railed, just look for Steffi the Deer on Twitter and Blue Sky and places like that. I love her, my waifu, my fucking waifu, and I have just enough discretion covering up the butt plug on the ass. Haven't gotten in trouble on YouTube yet. All right. So Danny Lavery of The Toast, of Dirtbag Hamlet, Women's Hotel, many other fine, funny books, and Dear Prudence, perhaps most widely known, wrote this really funny piece that went live today called What Every Nonfiction Book is Called Now. This is on his Substack, the Shatner Chatner. So there was this joke in 2022 that like every nonfiction book is called The Tiny Things We Know to Be Small. And oh no, that's what fiction books were called at that point in time. Like especially like the really precious kind of delicate, a little life, tragic shit. So this is so that was a joke that was circulating in like writing publishing world in 2022, the tiny things we know to be small, and Danny here is doing the equivalent with why am I not signed in, weird, with the equivalent of nonfiction books. So I'm gonna just read these. Hello Waluigi Bowser, welcome. So these are nonfiction book titles, not real ones, but like what the format of nonfiction books is like these days. Go ahead, see if I care theory. A heterosexual woman's guide to stifling herself. First things, why the morning ends and why it doesn't have to. The mastery of circles. A complete history of breakfast. I just straight up read this book. It's called 3 Squares, The History of the American Meal. Pasta Fabulous. Be a miracle right now. Why we age. These are so good. They don't call it menostop. Keep going after 50. Keep going after 50. Go harder after 60. Kill them all at 70. How to age without getting old. Oh, this one's so good. This is a real Chris Overalls moment. What being Chinese can teach us about aging. God, that's like Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother plus like so many anti-aging books. 1927, the year before 1928. The Untethered Mouth, eating for ADHD. Stop hitting yourself. How not to notice other people. What did people do during World War II? Like, half of these titles are like the most like derivative, broad market, conventional, like self-help, like anti-aging books and like productivity books. And then he'll throw out a book title like this that's like some shit I would read, like the type of shit that I fall for, like the breakfast one, like the history of breakfast, and like what did people do during World War II? Because as dumb and general as that question is, I do wonder about that. What did people do during World War II? What were the people who were just at home doing? You're like, fuck. The Orientalism. What the Chinese can teach us about breakfast. Fuck. There's so much going on with books like this where it's like, you have the Orientalism of like, oh, these people from this radically different seeming culture from ours in America have this ancient wisdom. And then it's also about these anxieties about China emerging as a superpower and like having so much influence potentially over us in terms of data they've collected and debt and everything. And so like the way that Americans are resolving that, and the way that like critiques of capitalism have started to find more purchase in the culture means that like people see the Chinese as like scary but also mystical, but also like they know something we need to figure out. It's so fucking funny. Oh my god. The Science of Fiddling. What recipes say about containment theory. The prehistoric origins of uncertainty. Again, this is another fucking thing I would read. The art of talking bravely to children. This is shit that like I get asked to blurb like every day. Someone's in my inbox asking me to blurb a book like that. The New Sleepiness. World War II when it happened. Hell yeah. What did people do during World War II? Because, you know, if a book is selling well, there needs to be about 5 other books just like it. They come out like a year later. Learn to Dare by Doing. The Paradox of Tenacity. The Courage to Stop Mattering. That's like the courage to be disliked. I love this book actually. I mean, it's a little bit, it's very self-helpy. It's not everyone's taste, but that's definitely what that's a reference to. And let me pull up Three Squares: The History of the American Meal. I read this book this year. Really interesting. Really, really interesting book. But until the very end, when it talks about obesity, Osler, that's where it just gets so infuriating. But I think it's worth a read. Just skip the last chapter if you don't want to hear that stuff, because I think the writer does a really good critique of historical beliefs around food. But when she gets to our present moment, she just regurgitates our current beliefs about food. The Darkest Month, December 1942. A true story of love and shipwreck. Like all the history books are about fucking World War II, Europe. Humble Risks. Oh. Who? Relearning, unlearning. Vulnerable. This is just unlearning shame, basically. Reclaiming the Brain and Finding Your Keys. Again, these are the kinds of books I get asked to blurb every day, like the ADHDer's Guide to Wiping Your Ass kind of type books. 52 Weeks of Biblical Watercolors. Oh, yeah, this kind of stuff sells really well. Journals, bullet journals, coloring books. The Youngest Brother Protocol. How living like your youngest sibling just might be the secret to a happy life. Oh my god. Airport book. Stop Underestimating the Pair. Don't hold everything you touch. The secret neuroscience of getting lost. Oh my God. Oh my Lord. Oh God. There's some crazy neuroscience reporting coming out right now that basically invalidates like decades worth of fMRI research that I should write about this new study, but I can't even confront it right now because I would just go so rabid talking about it. What happens when you stop dying? The life-changing wisdom of sea anemones. This is like my octopus teacher, that book. The hardest year, the life-changing habit. Again, very optimizing. The 4 types of money. The pivot hour. These are all like, your rich dad, poor dad, bullet, the 4-hour work week kind of stuff. Core coaching effect. How to transform more, focus outward, and change the generation you weigh. The other side of daring. The remarkable discipline of procrastination. What happens when you stop dying? Legacy of Governance, Warren G. Harding. Grandpa book. That's a grandpa book. That's an airport book. That's a grandpa book. Well, here we go. What China has to teach us about longevity and also exceptional one-pan meals. Yup. Cooking books still sell well. Coloring books still sell well. Grandpa books sometimes still sell okay. But like throw in a little China on top of that and an anti-aging book, and you have a book you can try to sell. Inheritance of Rust, The History of the EPA. I would read that. I want to read that. Presumed to Grow, How Ace Hardware Rescued Itself. Some of these books just scream to me like somebody wrote like the dumbest master's thesis and they managed to get a publishing deal for it, and God bless them. But my God. How many more of these? Okay, we're almost done. What plants teach us about leaves. This is braiding sweetgrass, basically, and lots of other things since then. But braiding sweetgrass is the good one. Very lovely book about indigenous wisdoms and also just rewilding natural spaces and what that looks like. Just indigenous practices for taking care of the earth. I think it's lovely. I'm sure there's probably some. There's moments where it's a little liberal, but like I think generally I really liked it. The Great Unsettling of the American Spleen. What music sounds like. The Next Big Idea. That's literally the Next Big Idea Club. Very like optimizer core. They interviewed me about laziness. But it's a website and community for fucking managers and shit. So it's dark-sided. It's evil. This is the kind of stuff that really made me sour on doing book press and media, because it's like I'm talking about my like anti-work book to like a explicitly like very like manager kind of subscription plan. Like basically Next Big Idea Club, you just subscribe to them and then they give you content about some book that's going to optimize your life every month. Here's like this one, this could be a Danny Lavery example here. The greatest sentence ever written. It's the power of regret. Think again. Talking to strangers. You get the vibe. You get the flavor. My Winter Kitchen. That sounds nice. What Costco can teach us about China and what China can teach us about strategy. Salad whore. 10 years ago, this would have been vegetarian, bitch. That makes me think of Thug Kitchen. Horrible racist book where it started out as a Tumblr. This white couple would write recipes in this imagined thug character voice who's like, okay, motherfuckers, first thing you want to do is chop up these some bitches this way or whatever. It wasn't even remotely like AAVE or like how anyone talks in the world other than like a weird white person's imagining of like somebody who's like hard. And for a long time, they purposefully obscured who they were as authors. They just went by Thug Kitchen. And people didn't know that they were white. Of course, the only people who liked this shit, I'm sure, were predominantly white people on Tumblr, but they got a book deal, and then eventually it came to light more publicly that they are white authors, Michelle Davis and Matt Holloway. God, oh, I hated them on Tumblr. Not to self-congratulate, but it was so gross. It was always so gross. So vegetarian bitch. Raising kids cold, raising kids strong. The surprising science of turning the heat off. It's a very like stoic, like you're gonna give your kid an ice bath, but also you're not doing like a tiger mom thing where you're putting too much pressure on the kid, like, or helicoptering. You can see its place in the evolving cultural conversation about being anxious about how you raise your kids, how they make airplane or whatever. Yeah, tell me how they make airplane or whatever. And then finally, another book I would fully read. This is some Dawn of Everything type shit. Why Some Societies Last Forever. Oh, this Danny, you're a silly boy. Danny excels at many things, but like he is so good at like a funny pastiche that is more than just a pastiche, that really like skewers a particular thing going on in the culture that's like not just the obvious part of the trope, but like some of the undergirding. I think some of the China ones are really good examples of that, and some of the like history ones. So yeah, so people were asking in the chat about the courage to be disliked. I really like it. I read this book at a time when I was kind of going through a big rift with some friends and was going to have to take a position. Apologies for the Amazon, on something that people weren't gonna like, and I found it motivating, empowering. It takes the form of a dialogue, so it is and this, look, like the title is The Japanese Phenomenon That Shows You How to Change Your Life and Achieve Real Happiness, right? So like we have a little bit of the like what the Chinese can teach us about you know, cooking. The difference here though is that it is by two Japanese authors in conversation with each other, and so it's not pure like Western Orientalism from like from the outside like that. Like but it is marketed that way to Westerners. But this book was originally in Japanese, and it is it's a self-help book, and it's a really quick read because it takes the form of conversations between kind of like a teacher and a student about getting more comfortable with being disliked, standing up for yourself, going against the grain. I think it speaks a little bit to that cultural context in which it exists, where the way that you express disagreement or deviance in Japanese culture is pretty different from the U.S., where we can be a little bit more loud about it. But it's also, these insecurities feel so universal. So I was reading it right at a really hard time where I was having a big like rift with a friend group, where I was having to do what I thought was right and have certain people, say things about it that weren't true and not want to be around me anymore after we'd been really close for many years. And so I really found that it helped me feel good about that, and go through some of that change that was happening and loss. It is very self-helpy. It's a little cornball. It does, in how it's presented to a Western audience, have a little bit of that like Orientalism and stuff. But also, I think if you're like a reader who doesn't like really dry texts, if you like things that are more conversational, you might really like it. If you don't cringe too much at self-help, you'll like it. I mean, I was still able to sit with it no problem, even though it is like marketed in a mainstream way, and so some of the examples might be a little like casually sexist, like in terms of just like centering, like most of the examples like kind of center male characters. But like I found it useful. I liked it, Um if this it's in my list of books that I recommend to people that are like kind of influences on my work, particularly my work as self-help. So when I talk about like becoming disobedient and stuff like that, like there's a little bit of the courage to be disliked in there, and there's a little bit of like how to deal with emotionally explosive people. which also is a book that has its problems. You know, I am very happy to recommend a book that has flaws. Um, this one has. I really disagree with the author's take on CPTSD, but I think reading things that you don't fully agree with is important and useful. So take what you can get from it. If that feels like something you feel like doing, I liked it. Don't mean it's perfect. Okay, let me catch up with the chat here. We love Chris Overalls. Chris Overalls. People need to stop gassing him up. Like, people are so like. He's cute. He's funny. I've laughed at a lot of his videos, but I feel that too many of the T-boys are unironically like we don't need to be that desperate. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't need to be shocked that somebody wants to fuck us. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. Like, I think he's really cute. I think he's really funny. But like, people, some of the T-boys are throwing themselves at him on a level that's like I don't, that it's like he's making jokes about being a chaser, which is we're chaser neutral here. I have no problem with that. But it's like he's specifically being kind of a douchebag. Like, we can do better than that. Like, his character, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but like, he's funny. I don't think he fucks good. I just don't get the vibe that he fucks good. I get the vibe that he's collecting a lot of T-boys, and that's fine. But I feel like we could do better than that. I don't know. Like, it just reminds me of a stage in my transition where being affirmed was all it really took. You know, like that somebody found me attractive as a man and as a trans man and saw that as a plus, like, felt good because of the insecurities I had. But that is not a rare thing. So like, I don't know why everybody is so crazy for him, because like, there's a million people like that. Like, there are T-boy appreciators everywhere. There are T-boy appreciators everywhere. Just go look at a bush outside and you will find a T-boy appreciator. I promise you. So that's the one thing that cheeses me off a little bit about Chris Overalls, is like, people are like laying roses at his feet, when I think people should just kind of be like, yeah, that's funny. He's cute. Like, whatever, you know, like, that's just what it reminds me of. Maybe that's my shit, but there's a million Chris Overalls out there, baby. You don't need just that one. You can find one that'll treat you right. Or maybe you just want to roll in the hay with him once, and that's fine. But there are many Chris Overalls out there. These all sound like actual books I would sell as a charity bookshop volunteer. These book titles are cracking me up. We ADHD maxing, hell yeah. Transpeak says, I need the courage to be disliked. Yeah, it's a quick read. Give it a little taste. And yes, Seabell, I think it's worth a read. The History of the American Meal, Closet Demon says, I was like, ooh, but I don't think I want to touch anything with obese, the O slur. Yeah, that's fair. The thing about that book, and I almost wrote a piece about it, but I decided it wasn't really worth the time to like go into it. The book talks about lots of weird beliefs that people have had throughout time about what eating means and what you need to eat. And when she looks at, you know, what like early American colonizers thought they needed to eat, she can be very critical of how that's made up. Or like fears people had during industrialization about food and changes in how people ate and how those things were biased. But then she talks about how there's like people eat too much now in this way that is so just like credulous of the existing status quo. And it's just kind of a bummer that she couldn't extend that kind of critical analysis to the present day. So I didn't like that. Sasha says homework books for business freaks. That's an anime sicko take on it. You're exactly right. How Ace Hardware rescued itself. Sasha says, if books could kill is a great podcast if anyone wants to hear people rip bullshit airport books to shreds. Absolutely. So good. Oh, hi, Blair. Blair, I'm glad you're here. Hello, how's it going? My good homie. Good to see you. Stabby Vale, I've got a copy of Thug Kitchen. I think they were going to throw it out in our shop. It's so cringe. It's so bad. It's so racist. The Secret Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That was one of my comp titles for laziness. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Let me show y'all that. by Mark Manson. So, or Mason, Manson, Manson. So when you are trying to sell a book to a publisher, you have to have these things called comp titles, which is books that have sold really well. That you are going to say, my book is really similar to this book. That's a horrible image quality, but you get the idea. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, a Counterintuitive Approach to Living a Good Life. Author of Everything is Fucked, Mark Manson. And so when you're trying to sell a book, so when I was selling Laziness, you have to have a list of comp titles, and you have to say that my book is like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck meets, Jenny Odell's How to Do Less. Or How to Do Nothing, sorry. Smash them together, and that's Laziness Does Not Exist. And both those books sold insanely well, and so my book will sell insanely well. So your comp titles almost always have to be some shit that is really mainstream popular, which usually means that it kind of sucks pretty bad. So, yeah, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck was one of my comp titles. What else was there? Shopcraft as Soulcraft. Shop Class as Soulcraft. It's very like, oh, how having a motorcycle teaches you to take care of yourself. An inquiry into the value of work. Like shit like that. Boy business freak work books. We love it. Some of these book titles sound like movie parodies. They're very funny. Is Chris Overall's like Halamede for boys? Or Not That Bad as Halamede? Well, you say that like Halamede's bad. Halamede is god tier. Halamede is amazing. I love Halamede, and there's a commentary to what she's doing that's really funny. I love Halamede. We have had Halamede on a live stream here with me and Maddie on our show, Time Theft Today. You can go in the archive of Time Theft Today live streams here on YouTube, and we had Halamede on the show while we were playing through the game that she comes from. And Halamede, like, is probably a trans woman writing that character, or someone who's just, like, their partner is a trans woman and they're, like, get the pass or something from her girlfriend to, like, write this stuff. And, like, she gets it. Chris Overalls, I guess that is part of the bit, is that it's a Halamede for T-boys. But to me, it just, I guess that's the same thing. But I think part of why it's different is because it is, like, a cis bi guy who's like actually using it to get laid. And that's funny, but I've been on social media for a long time and I don't think that ends well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to slide into Chris Overall's DMs and get your back blown out, by all means, that's what everybody is there to do. You know, that's what he's trying to do. That's what a lot of T-boys are trying to do. But you don't have to do that. You can just get on Grindr, and there's 1,000 Chris Overallses, and some of them won't have made it their whole public thing that they fuck T-boys, which some of us would feel some type of way about. Maybe it's because I'm not actually a T-boy, but I always found when somebody was like specifically a T-boy appreciator, I was grossed out by it. I felt gross. Like, that just didn't connect for me. It just feels like kind of cheap. Like I'm gonna validate your identity, and I find people like you hot is just like not specifically sexy to me. Even though I'm very chaser neutral. Like, I've certainly fucked chasers and like I get it, but like, I don't know. I just don't I don't love I have laughed at a lot of his jokes. I follow him. I like him, but I see trouble on the horizon. You know what I mean? Like, I think that bit can only go on so long, and like I think some T-boys are lapping it up in a way that's like, just laugh at the joke. You don't have to be like thirsty for it on that level, because Chris Overalls are not rare. Does that make sense? It's like if people were actually trying to fuck Halamede all the time, and I don't see that. I don't see that many. Maybe I'm missing it, but I don't think that many girls are like actually like, because Halamede isn't real. She's a character. Whereas the Chris Overalls character, people are trying to actually fuck that character and that person. So it's a little weird to me. But I'm like overanalyzing it, but like that's just how I feel. If you love Chris Overalls, try going outside like and showing Hulk, because you will have 19 Chris Overalls in a second, and some of them will pay you. You know, that's all I'm saying. Like, Chris Overalls is great, but like he's not aspirational. He's just like a lot of people. Like, a lot of people want to fuck T-boys. It's not, I think some T-boys are still surprised by that, and they should not be. Does that make sense? Am I saying anything that makes sense here? Or am I just being neurotic? I don't know. Yeah. Books Could Kill covered this one. Oh, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I presume. I haven't listened to that one. Blair says, thank you, Halamede. Yes, we love you, Halamede. I loved Halamede's gift guide for trans women. She has a very good Substack. And her gift guide for trans women is honestly, I found kind of sweet and thoughtful. I thought it was good shit. Annika says, Halamede is definitely a trans woman. Yeah, she's got to be. Unless she's multiple people, but I think she's too consistently on character to be multiple people. She has a piece of reasons you think I'm transgender. I am not transgender. But she's a character, you know? Like, she's not going around being Halamede to pull bitches, and that is, I think, the difference to me. And Halamede is supposed to be bad. Yeah, exactly, Annika. Halamede is funny because I've dated cis women like her, and it's not fun. She's a chaser who puts trans women on this weird pedestal and sees them as magical creatures and sees trans women loving other trans women as incest. And like, she is predatory. Like, she talks about how vulnerable trans women are as if that's a positive. You would not want to actually date Halamede. And when it comes to Chris Overalls, it's tougher because where the character ends and the real person begins gets a lot muddier because yeah, he's playing a character for comedy and social media, but also like he fully is like also doing that. And so it's a little bit like, look out. Look out. I don't know. Seems like it could go bad for him too. If you use your like large following account, social media account to get laid, you're in danger. Like, you're gonna fuck up your life. Like, it's not good. Like, I don't think he's a bad person. I just think, oh baby, look out. I'm not sure what Stabby was talking about. Holistics can probably still keep it though. I find the writing style endearing. Honestly, no hate to the author. I'm not sure what book that was in reference to. The cookbooks. Halamede is in for the art. Yes, exactly, Blair. Halamede is expressing something creatively and having fun and does not break character. Like, even if you're trying to know the girl behind the aura, so you can fuck this hilarious trans woman, you can't get in there. Because we have had Halamede on this show. We don't know anything about her as a person. The person behind the aura. Like, it's not there. You know, like, she does not do that. Which is very smart. Just learn from me, kids. Don't try to get laid from your social media. It's bad. It's bad. It's not fun. If you have a big social media, anyway. All right. That long preamble settled. Let's dive into the piece of the week. The problem isn't that the women are unattractive. Misogyny masquerading as social critique. I'll put a link to this in the chat so you can follow along if you are so inclined. And I'll pin that. All my work is free to read always at drdevonprice.substack.com. And this piece I really threw together pretty quickly. I had a real fire in my belly because of the Karoline Leavitt photos. That's that photo here on the left and people's reaction to it. Before we get going, let's do a little bit of bubbling because I know I've been talking very fast. So this is something I do from my voice lessons and just trying to get better at moving air because I tend to hold my breath and talk really fast, and I think it's, you know, good little calm down exercise. So we're gonna do a few little like long exhale bubble blows, and then we're gonna read the piece. Yes, ASMR slash horrible sound if you don't like this kind of noise. Oh, also, hello, DJ on Dion. Welcome. Good to see you. All right. I think we're good. I've been moving air a lot better lately when I talk, so that's been really nice. And I think you can people close to me have told me that they can hear the prosody difference, that my voice is like more emotionally expressive because it's like less muted and like locked up, and also because I'm feeling more right in myself and less depressed and stuff. So we're moving air a little bit. Let's dive on in. So the cover image for this piece is a triptych, an MS Paint triptych of some of the women that I'm talking about in the piece. On the left is a really close-up shot of Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary. This photo ran in Vanity Fair and went viral because people thought it looked really ugly. But she just has, and we'll talk about it more in the piece, she's wearing pretty heavy makeup, makeup that tends to be for television and long distance photography. And so that type of makeup can really fill in the lines in your face when you're close up. So they can look very like matte and long wear and lasting from a distance. It's good for being photographed from a distance or filmed from a distance. But when you get really up close to someone wearing that kind of makeup, the powder is thick and matte or dull, so it goes in the lines of the face, so it can make wrinkles more prominent. And she also has, and the style of makeup I think is something that many of us would register as more what older women would wear. So that is also aging in our perceptions of her. And then she also has injection sites along the top of her lip that are a little bit red and angry looking, a little bit visible. And so the closeness of the shot and some of these kind of aging features and the obvious cosmetic work grossed a lot of people out, and people were talking a lot about it. She's 28 years old. People said she looks a lot older than that. And it was the subject of much social media conversation. Next in the triptych is a picture of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande from the Wicked multi-year promotion cycle. They were in Vanity Fair, actually in this shot too. Cynthia Erivo is sitting in the center of the frame. There's kind of a gold brick background, and Cynthia Erivo's looking quite regal and holding Ariana Grande's hand, who stands behind her, almost like a wife in a portrait. And they both look the way they've been looking lately, which is smaller than they used to look. And then finally, we have Kimberly Guilfoyle, former now, Trump admin, ambassador to Greece, and many other things, ex of one of the Trump sons. And she is against a red background with big white pearls and kind of a plunging neckline wrap dress, navy blue wrap dress. She has kind of heavy, like, smoky eye makeup on and earrings. Her hair looks great. She has some, what her face always looks like, which is she does have some work done. She has plumped upper lips and bottom lips, and has maybe had some other work done too. And people call her an exemplar of Mar-a-Lago face. Not that it matters, because women's appearances we should not be critiquing here, but like, I think she looks great. But people act like she's like disgusting. People act like all four of these women look disgusting, just because they either have signs of cosmetic work, signs of aging, or signs of weight loss. That could be an eating disorder, could be Ozempic, could be something else. And people have focused entirely on their appearances rather than the substances of their actions in certain circles. The sin of having skin as a woman, basically. And I think people are acting so like brand new and like they've never seen what makeup does before. There are different types of makeup for different types of situations and like what your goals are. So some makeup is designed to reflect the light from like a photo shoot, like a fashion shoot. Some makeup is made to look dewy and quote unquote natural, not powdery. That's something that's very on trend the last several years, is the glazed donut skin, where you want everything to look really wet and you want to put a lot of products on your face that either are or feel like they're transparent. But that's a trend. And it used to be looking greasy was considered bad. Um, and different styles of makeup exist for different things. You have primers that fill in pores, but that can be bad for your skin long term or cause breakouts. There's drag makeup that is very elaborate and is designed to look really good in the dark from far away in a club, but looks very different up close. And it's just weird to like be surprised that makeup that is designed to be looked at from far away for a particular media like role is like looks different close up. Like it's so silly. And it's undervaluing women's labor in makeup. I've been following the promotion of the Wicked franchise closely for what has now been years. Like many a gay with musical theater leanings, I know all the memes about holding space, the closely cropped photographs of Ariana Grande tenderly holding Cynthia Erivo's finger, the real person fan fiction-y guessing about the actors' relationships to each other, and their propensity to suddenly collapse into tears. These are probably all memes that most of y'all are familiar with. If not, there are links in the piece. These are all just kind of awkward moments that came out in the promotion for Wicked. They've done so many interviews, and they're often crying, saying weird things, being really close to each other, being really, really emotionally intense, and just theater kids. They're being theater kids. Though people have made all kinds of different things of it. It draws me in because it's camp. Because I too belted Defying Gravity in the shower as a closeted teen in the early 2000s. Defying Gravity being a song from Wicked that is all about kind of breaking free of society to be yourself. Because I watched Quiet on the Set, about a lot of the abuses on Nickelodeon children's show or like sitcom sets, and my heart panged for all the hypersexualized and overworked child actors with a parasocial sympathy. And because I find Ariana Grande's public turn into a fragile, soft-voiced femininity quietly fascinating and resonant as a once precocious elf child who is coping with the steady creep deep into my 30s about as conflictedly as she seems to be. Her just getting more fragile, seeming more fragile over time. It's just kind of interesting to me. But it's also a performance, as we'll get into later. But I've also been watching the Wicked media blitz so closely because I have an eating disorder, one that's been with me since I was a teen. And reading everything that people have to say about these women's bodies and their apparent, almost gaudy illness feeds a dark fury in me that no amount of gentle, moderate exercise and respectable, intuitive eating has ever been able to tame. This media blitz has been fucking bad for me, frankly, but it's a scab that I can't help but pick. Especially when thousands of supposedly left-leaning people are claiming that leering at these women's bodies is a necessary and feminist thing, because it will help to spare other young women from becoming reedy, weak-voiced, overly emotional, tired-looking, surgically modified, mad freaks like me. Some people might not be aware of how much this commentary is happening. I'm on a lot of like pop girly subreddits. I follow a lot of accounts on YouTube and Instagram and Reddit and Tumblr for people who are interested in pop music and pop artists. So I have been seeing this commentary for years now that people are saying these women are crying a lot because they're starving and they're going crazy. People will say things like, they said something nonsensical during an interview that must mean that their brains are fucking rotting because of their eating disorder. I've heard people posting and seen people posting pictures of just like little small pieces of their bodies and saying, isn't that so disgusting? How their neck has these tendons, or like, I won't even go into it, just poking at specific features of them as a subject of disgust, saying that losing weight makes you look old and disgusting, that they look like bugs, like all of these really insulting things that are not helpful to anyone who has an eating disorder that is related to scrutinizing and worrying about how they look. It does not help to hear, oh, also these women are really disgusting. And at the end of the day, the thing that matters is whether or not a woman looks fuckable to me. So that is a lot of what I'm responding to. If you haven't seen that stuff, then you're not in that world, and I'm glad you're not. But it is really widespread. It's something I've really been seeing for years now in a lot of different pop spaces, and a lot of times it's people who are feminist saying, "Look at how disgusting these women have made themselves be, and insane they've made themselves." I'm presuming they presume it's because of an eating disorder, and that the eating disorder is like driving them crazy and making them like non-functional people. And there's a lot of ableism wrapped in there, and also that it makes them disgusting, and that's like a fit punishment for them promoting dangerous body ideals, or like fat phobic, thin worshipping body ideals. That it's like people take like a sickly joy out of, oh, they went too far with this thing that we tell basically every woman to do. They did the thing, but they went too far, and they failed at the whole goal of the thing, which is to be hot and useful to people. They've made themselves weaker. They've made themselves less attractive, and so they failed at being a woman. Not because of anything else, but because of that. Like, it's still focused on the images. The Jeweled Horn, hello, photo. Welcome. Good to see you, homie. Good to see ya. Sasha says, yeah, it feels like hypercorrecting for fat phobia and how it connects with misogyny in a way that is really shitty toward people with eating disorders and generally misogynist. Yeah, and it's not even like, oh, people are being so thin phobic, right? Like, oh, we're so oppressed. Thin people are not oppressed for being thin. And also, it can still be, like, not every bad thing in the world that you can do is an oppression. Like, there are things you can do that are not oppressive that are still shitty, unhelpful things to do. And commenting constantly on women's bodies and how they look, and whether you find those body sizes appealing or fuckable or not, it still leads down the same road. It still is the same set of tools and ideologies that give us fat phobia. And it's still unhelpful to people with eating disorders to do, or it's dangerous to women to do, even when, like, the intention might be, oh, I'm scared about how much our culture worships thinness, so I'm going to attack the thinness of someone who is too thin. All you're telling women there is that there's bumpers on either side of where they need to be, and that if they fail, they're gonna be punished and hit with that bumper. That is not better. Like, installing another bumper doesn't help, like, allow people to be what their bodies want to be and to accept themselves. It just tells them the standards are very narrow, and you need to keep worrying about whether or not you're in line with the standards. It's just there's a whole set of standards on the other side too. Like, we've pushed you in this direction of worshiping thinness, and now we're going to tell you also that, like, even if you do that, you can screw up, and the problem is that you're not attractive. So, yeah, absolutely. Sasha says, I've always been very thin, so I want to tread carefully. Skinny shaming is an equivalent to fat phobia, but woof, this hits as someone in recovery and a mad woman, non-binary. Yes, exactly. I think we can talk about this without doing some, like, oh, it's reverse fat phobia, it's reverse racism, right? Something can be damaging and shitty and not be an oppression. We can critique things that aren't oppressions. People can do things that are not oppressive, that they fully, like, have every right to do, and it can still suck and be unhelpful, and I think that gets mixed up sometimes in leftist dialogue, where people feel like, as long as you're not doing or saying anything oppressive, or as long as you are in spirit pushing against an oppressive norm, you can kind of do whatever you want. That's when the gloves come off. And it's not true. Like, you still can do bad things without being oppressive. You can still be shitty to people, even if you are maybe the person who is more oppressed in the framework, like, and that's not to erase the structure of the oppression. It's just like, there are consequences to these actions. They still affect people. And as we'll get to in a second here, most people with eating disorders are not thin, so you're still not helping anything. You're just ignoring the reality of what eating disorders look like for most people by making your focus thin, visibly thin women, and that being how you know someone's eating disorder, just because they're thin. That's not how that shit works. That's not how bodies work. That's not the reality of eating disorders. DJ on Dion says reinforcing the idea of a normal body only strengthens fat phobia. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Um, absolutely. Um, it's still saying you need to make your body meet some ideal rather than like the project of fat liberation, being that like like looking at the science, looking at the reality, looking at body autonomy, and letting people have the bodies that they have. Like the body autonomy road means that people are going to make choices about their body that you might not agree with, and or that make you uncomfortable, and also like acknowledging the very limited amount of control we actually have over our body size. Like the fact that these two women are thin, the like explanatory variable there, even if they have eating disorders, which we don't know, by the way. We don't know that. We don't know anything about their lives. They aren't thin because they have eating disorders. They were always thin women. They are predisposed to thinness. That is what predominantly shapes a person's body size, factors outside of their conscious control. And so it's already missing the point to criticize their body size on the basis of having an eating disorder, because a majority of eating disordered people aren't thin. That's not how it works. That's not how the body works. So, yeah. A lot of it is tied in with ableism and racism also. Closet Demon says, thin phobia isn't real, but misogyny and anti-ugliness are real and affect thin people. Yep. Yeah. Obviously, thin people get a huge amount of privilege in how we move through the world. So we're never like the main character of these things. But I think if we're talking about, if you're worried about the well-being of eating disordered people, let's talk about how pointless it is to like be like, ooh, it's so gross that this person's thin. Closet Demon says, I'd argue it is an oppression, just not oppression based in thinness, but oppressions based in other things, like that are being focused onto thinness. Yeah, misogyny. Still seeing women as like a decorative object. Birdie Bit says, I think it's very easy to conflate being empowered in some way with being protected. Like having a weapon does very little to make weapons hurt you less. And also, like, I think, like, my ethics is like, just because you are like being oppressed has no moral value. Right? Being oppressed doesn't make you a better person. It does not give you license to do things that necessarily, like interpersonal things that less oppressed or non-oppressed people can't do. Right? If we're talking about like a revolution or reparations collectively, and oppressed people taking the resources back from their oppressors, yeah, go off. But like, I don't like that does not translate to you have no obligation to consider the well-being of a member of a different group that you have a relationship to, or like how you treat individuals. Like that just doesn't lead anywhere that makes any sense, you know. And it's really dehumanizing of oppressed people. Like to say that like, oh well, for you, you're oppressed, so there's no ethical standard for how you treat people or talk about people. Like that's not how that works. Anne Riley says, I've seen this discourse as well, and I've had to disengage. My body size changes due to my various disabilities. You lost weight, looks great. You were way too thin before. Meanwhile, I feel like shit. Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of part of what I'm getting at, you know? Like having had and still having, because it doesn't really ever go away completely, an eating disorder, and having all kinds of different kinds of bodies, people commenting on that or trying to link those things was never helpful to me, whether it was talking about me or talking about other people's bodies. Like, if you think my like eating disorder brain is going to hear, oh, it's so disgusting that these women are thin, and hear like, I should get better, that is not what happens. For some people, it's an incentive to get worse. For other people, it's just another way in which to feel bad, or to make them feel like they need to cover their tracks more. There's nothing good going on there. There's nothing good going on there. If you're, maybe this is an inside conversation, you know, like if you want to talk to your friends about how disgusted you feel by famous people when nobody else is going to hear it, like fine. But like this being the public response for a lot of people that they think is like the just thing to do, that's going to help people, I think is really off base. I'll spit my point out, commenting on the disgustingness of these women's bodies, how old and haggard their faces look now that they are no longer robed in facial fat. saying that their illness is so obvious and irresponsible, as if to harbor clear mental illness would be some great sin. Comparing photographs of their more robust and filled out looking selves to the bodies they have today, as if they are meant to stay young and hale forever. Speculating luridly about competitive eating disorders and abuses on film sets without any interest in stopping it, or whether it's true. Fretting openly about how terribly unsexy or unwomanly they have become. None of that has helped any eating disorder sufferer ever, and it never will. So there's a lot of stuff that I kind of run through here. These are all things that I've seen people say multiple times. That people will say these women are crazy and they're falling apart, and also they are morally to blame for any consequence that happens of somebody witnessing their bodies. They say like these women are being abused on set, or they've been forced into some kind of competitive eating disorder, but we don't actually care about their well-being. We just think it's really bad that they're doing this in front of us. They say they look old. They say they look disgusting. All of these things. They don't look like women, because to be a woman means having certain types of curves. Like there's some transphobia and sexism in there. All kinds of really gross things. And that line of argument and conversation just all goes back to these women are not making themselves look right. They're not doing the performance that a woman is supposed to do in public, which is to be attractive effortlessly. And the problem is that they're not doing that. Not that they're promoting a norm. Like people might think that they're criticizing the norm, but they end up just criticizing how the women look, which does not change a norm in a positive way. Yeah, lots of comments in the chat. Hello, Darth Zarek. I'm sorry, Darth Zarek. About how people will often compliment people when they lose weight, even if a person has lost weight due to illness or as a side effect of a medication, and they might feel lots of conflicted feelings about it. I think this comes down the hardest on fat people who have to fight so hard for like an ounce of respect in this world, and have to unlearn so much to be able to take care of their bodies and nourish themselves and do with their bodies what they want to do. And then if they happen to lose weight, suddenly they're treated like a person for the first time. And how disgusting that is, and how complicated those feelings are of, thinking for some people that is going to make them feel better, and then realizing how conditional societal approval is, and knowing how hollow it is. Being congratulated on being sick, being congratulated on your body changing in maybe ways you didn't want. Lots of horrible shit. Yeah. I'm pro haggard. We love haggard women. Yes, I love haggard. Love being haggard. Talking shit about Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande's bodies certainly will not help either of these women climb their way out of whatever unwellness might or might not be visiting them. They could have cancer, they could have some kind of illness. There could be all kinds of things going on, or they could just look that way. It's kind of honestly not any of our fucking business. Nor will it get them to escape the pressures of the highly superficial, punishing, and misogynistic world of being a publicly commented upon figure, should you actually give a shit. And you don't have to care about them as individual people. If your ethics is they're famous, they're rich, they have a huge impact on the world, and therefore they're fair game, I can understand that perspective. But you are hitting other people when you fire those bullets. It definitely does not improve public awareness of the reality of eating disorders, which are far more prevalent among larger women than thin ones, the average American woman being plus-sized after all, and whose illnesses are unlikely to be seen or cared about. It is fat women, after all, who are the most fervently and abusively told or forced to change their bodies, or that their bodies have to be changed. Anything that feeds into the narrative that you can tell that someone has an eating disorder by looking at them is fat phobic, because a majority, I think it's pretty much fair to say that a majority of fat people, at least in the US, are societally given an eating disorder. They're almost basically forced into eating disordered behaviors by their doctors and families. and the world around them, uh, it's very hard to not absorb societal fat phobia and to have a relationship to that in general, but especially if you are fat. And so if you a lot of people who have eating disorders, an eating disorder does not necessarily make you lose weight. A lot of them do not. A lot of them cause a lot of disruption in the metabolism in all kinds of different ways, and the body is just generally not set up to lose weight. So the idea that you can look at someone and tell that they have an eating disorder is just completely wrong, and it ignores the suffering of fat people with eating disorders, which are a majority of eating disorder sufferers, and instead turns all the focus on these thin women. It's still centering thin women, which is so frustrating. Maintenance phase is great. Your fat friend Aubrey Gordon, she was a really early influence on my writing when she was on Medium, just as the anonymous account Your Fat Friend. I looked up to her and how she did her work so much, and she really shaped how I wrote on Medium and how I still write today in a lot of ways. And I love her work so much. Her book, What We Talk About When We Talk About Fat, is so good. It's a bit of a collection of her. Wait, is it What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat? Yeah, my bad. What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. It's a little bit of a collection of her Medium essays written as Your Fat Friend, updated, and then there's some new stuff in there too. Yeah, I think she's great. Ula Mui says, is giving your opinion on how somebody looks ever a good idea? I've seen people say that instead of saying you look good or sexy, for example, you ask people how they feel. I think, and this gets into the response to this piece a little bit, because some people are like, we have to criticize these body standards somehow. I think commenting on somebody's body in a public venue where you know when it has not been invited or is not part of the agreed structure of the interaction, you know what I mean, is not okay. Like, I don't think it helps anything. Like, if you are talking to somebody in a cruising space, I think you can tell them they have a sexy body. If you are competing in a beauty pageant where the whole idea is that you are being evaluated and you've signed up for that, I guess people can talk about your body. That you can understand that you're getting into that. If you're a bodybuilder and you're in a bodybuilding competition, people can talk about your body as they're like judging and evaluating your body. But I think that, like, outside of those constraints, it's not like ever helpful in a public venue to think you can tell someone about how their body looks, or that it's helpful for anyone who's in the blast zone. Like, I really don't think I don't think it's helping anything to be like, there's too many thin women and they're disgusting. Like, you can talk about let's talk instead about how fat people are excluded from society instead of focusing again on the thin people. That's my opinion. Do I always live up to that opinion? No. Like, especially if I'm like thirsting after someone, I will sometimes talk about their body, and I've done that on these streams. But like, I think if we're really, really thinking about it and like what we're trying to put out into the world, evaluating someone based on their body publicly, unless it's specifically a situation where they've kind of asked us to do that, is not helpful. Transpeak says, I like complimenting people on things they have control over and put intention to: hairstyle, clothes, tattoos, piercings, etc. Yeah. And again, I think there is fuzziness when it's like in a sexual scenario. Excuse me. Sexual or flirty scenario. If somebody's specifically talking about fashion and they want advice or they want feedback on like, I really like how that fits you, or I really like how that shows off that body part. That's so cool. That's so hot. Those are things where talking about bodies feels okay. But I think if you have not been invited to talk about somebody's appearance, don't do it. Like, don't tell me I look tired. I fucking hate that. That one's very triggering to me. I've been told that since I was like 5 years old. It's just not. I'll sometimes tell people that they're glowing, like especially if they've started estrogen. Maybe that's a little Halamede of me. I'm willing to admit that. Like, things like that, like, again, I'll sometimes say things, but the truth is I don't actually know how the person feels or if they want to hear that. Because there were times when people commented on how I looked in my transition where they assumed I was happier at a time when I wasn't. And like, I don't know, like close friends, that's fine. Close friends telling me I look good, that's great. If I'm talking about my appearance, you know, complimenting my hair or jewelry or whatever, if I'm already talking about how something looks, then commenting on it is one thing. But I think out just going cold on like this person's body tells me this thing about them is really not helpful. My response to that one is, what a nice way to tell me I look like shit. Yeah, I hate the fucking tired thing. It pisses me off so much. Talking shit about Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande's bodies harms people who resemble these women, whether they are notably thin due to restriction, cancer, inability to recognize and respond to hunger cues, muscle wasting, dietary limitations, malnourishment, ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which we'll talk about more in a bit, neglect, or any number of factors. It pointlessly, cruelly targets anyone who has been accused of losing so much weight that they started looking old, or of having Ozempic face. This is something I've been talking about on Tumblr for quite some time. There's this idea that, like, people are fat phobic, so losing weight and becoming more thin is seen as a good thing. But people also see it as cheating if you lose weight in the wrong way, such as through a GLP-1. Because we moralize this stuff so much, people see it as wrong to lose weight and not suffer. That if it was easy, that somehow you've done it in the wrong way. And people also see if you lose weight and you lose facial fat, people will say you look old, and that you have Ozempic face. So there's like a really lovely combo of ageism, fat phobia, moralizing, suffering as purity, and a bunch of other like great bullshit, all wrapped up in that conversation when people say those things. That to me, the implications are just really lurking right there under the surface, that people are saying, well, we hate fat people as a society and we think they should get thin, but we hate them. We don't want them to just magically get thin privilege. We want them to suffer for it. We actually want them to be an underclass. Like any other oppression, the people at the top benefit from there being people beneath them. And so as fat phobic as our society is, that society doesn't actually want fat people to not be fat, because they want to contrast themselves to them and oppress them, and treat them as lesser. And so then sometimes when a fat person gets thin privilege, they are punished for doing it in the wrong way, for still not looking good, for not really being a thin person because they have markers of having been fat, like skin that hangs or something like that, and people still punish them because of their proximity to fatness and because they still want there to be this hierarchy. And so there's this weird fucking discourse where even at a time where the beauty standards are getting even more fat phobic and even more thin worshipping, half the people who do that also get punished, because if they were fat, then they're not a real thin person. You know, they're a fake thin person. They're a conditionally accepted fat person. And if that sounds a lot to you like, I don't know, trans misogyny, passing, like lots of other kinds of oppressions, I think it's because those things operate in a lot of similar ways. They're not identical, but they operate in a lot of similar ways. And that has just really jumped out to me this whole time. Ozempic face. As if to lose weight through anything but sheer willpower merits punishment in the form of aging. And as if showing lines on one's face is a punishment, rather than a natural consequence of continuing to stay alive for a long period of time. Sasha says, and for women, God forbid you look old or masculine. God forbid you don't look fertile. Yes. Most of all, dealing in a relentless critique of these women's appearance instead of the substance of their actions or the broader socio-political circumstances in which they live distracts so completely from the point that it subsumes it and counters it entirely. This is a video that I quite liked on YouTube from Hey Kayla, I think is her name. Let me double check what her name. It's like something Kayla. Kayla Says, my bad. Kayla Says. I've liked her YouTube for some time. And she really talks about how commenting, and she interviews some like eating disorder treatment therapists, and I think had some really good takeaways about how if you're concerned about eating disorders being normalized or extreme thinness being promoted, you still want to talk about behavior, not bodies. That all that talking about bodies is going to do is give something for eating disordered people to fixate on, which you don't want to do. You don't want them to fixate on their body, comparing to someone else's body, worrying about their body all the time. Focus on actions, you know? Same thing with, like, if you're concerned about a friend's eating disordered behavior, you focus on the behavior and you tread very lightly, very, very lightly, because if you put them on the defensive or make them feel ashamed, you're not going to help. That is not when change happens, and that's not when honesty and vulnerability happen. Critics of these women can say that they care about the health and confidence of young women and body positivity, all that they want. But when they make commenting upon these women's unattractiveness and strangeness their primary weapon, it is only how women look that ever actually gets lampooned. The big lesson is the same objectifying patriarchal violence that we've always learned. A woman's primary function is to make herself easy to look at and to meet others' needs. If anything about her is unsettling or unappealing, she has failed at her great purpose, and for that she should be shamed. This is not a line of thinking that helps women get nourished. It teaches them that if they are doing poorly, it is their job to hide it better so that they can continue using their bodies to please others while neglecting their needs. The idea that a woman's function is primarily decorative is what gets them on GLP-1s when they otherwise wouldn't want or need them. Obviously, those medications are things people want and have had positive health effects from. Pushes them to exercise to painful excess or injury, or sees them seeking dramatic body modifications, motivated not by the joy of self-creation, but in a haste to not be disposed of. We tell young women to lose weight. Then we grimace at their marionette lines until they stuff their cheeks full of filler. Then we say they've grown too puffy, because how dare a woman look like she has fat again, and that their filler is migrating, and then they get additional adjustments, maybe removing some of the filler, dissolving it, getting something pulled back, etc. And then we call them body dysmorphic lunatics and lion-faced freak shows. I want to share some of the examples here that I've seen a lot. So I follow, longtime fans of the show know that I inherited a special interest in Taylor Swift from a deceased friend of mine, Context Machine, who was a 45-year-old autistic man who was obsessed with Taylor Swift in a very funny way. And through just sheer chutzpah and passion and autism, he, posted and blogged so much about Taylor Swift that I became also obsessed with him and with Taylor Swift. So I follow a lot of Taylor Swift subreddits, including a lot of the hate accounts and hate subreddits. This is one of them, r/Travis and Taylor. And they are constantly saying shit about how she has like bloated alcoholic face, or too much filler in her face. They are constantly saying like she looks so ugly now, comparing her face now to her face a few years ago, even like 1 or 2 years ago, and saying, look how puffy it is. Look how much filler she's put in. She's completely distorted her face. Like I said, they talk about alcoholic bloat, and so speculating about mental health stuff and health stuff in a gross way. And there's so many like bad implications to all of that. And the fucking thing is that if she hadn't gotten any work done and she started showing lines on her face, they would have complained about that too. They would have said white women, racist white women like Taylor Swift, aged like milk, being ugly is her punishment for being racist, and ugly people are ontologically evil. Like that's what they would have said. Ugly women especially are ontologically evil. And it's so gross. Like, I like hate subreddits. I like hearing people talk shit about her behavior. But when they go into, she looks so disgusting because she's a public woman who's aging and she's made some choices about how she wants to age in the public eye. It's disgusting. Like, this, I'm staking my flag in the sand right here because I've thought about it a lot. The politics of cosmetic surgery and stuff. Uh, People have the right to do what they want with their bodies, period. And that means if people want to make choices about navigating aging with cosmetic procedures, I think I'm in no place to say anything about that as somebody who's had cosmetic procedures. You know, like, I don't see a difference between me getting top surgery and somebody getting filler if they want to get filler. I think everybody should be allowed to do those things, and that we all do things for a complex mix of reasons. And we're all affected by having a society, right? Like, I was influenced by society to think I should have a flat chest, right? Like, having a flat chest means a specific thing to me because of society. And for similar reasons, having some filler kind of fill in and kind of fill out some of the lines on her face is something that Taylor Swift wanted to do, presumably. We don't actually know her life or why her face looks how it does. And so it's really fucking unhelpful to be like, oh, our society's biases around aging, instead of talking about that, we're going to talk about how ugly this woman looks because she did something about those feelings for herself and her own face. That's not helping any women age better to say, oh, your fillers make you look so gross. Stabby Vale says, the amount of left-leaning people I see insulting women's appearance for those they don't like politically. Birdie Bit says, you gotta guard the border, even with the rich and others talking shit about gaudiness and McMansions, etc. Stabby Vale says, for real, like, they're not reading it, but your friend who is fat or likes something you think is cringe is, etc. Story Merrill says, why are they comparing her as an 18-year-old to her as a 32-year-old? That's so ridiculous. Yeah. It's the same logic that they think they're critiquing. They're saying she doesn't look like how she used to. If she had just aged without cosmetic procedures, they would also be saying she doesn't look how she used to. And how she was looking was going to change regardless. And the changes that we see are changes she chose. Why is that a problem? And can you explain, this is like a math problem, explain why Taylor Swift getting fillers, controlling how her face looks, is a problem in a way that does not have implications that are bad for transgender people. I don't see how you can square that circle. Like, I cannot see it. And I've really thought about it because getting top surgery, it puts you in plastic surgery offices. And seeing stuff that's fat phobic, like mommy makeovers and stuff like that, liposuction. And it troubles me that those things are normalized. But I can't say that people shouldn't or can't do that stuff if they don't want to. I don't see how it's possible for me to make that argument as a trans person in any way that leads any place good for me and my people, Because people say the same shit about trans women getting facial feminization surgery, right? They say that it's like reinforcing sexist beauty standards and shit, Or like, do you really need triple D tit implants? People say that kind of stuff to trans women, that like, you're just trying to be fuckable. That's not the same thing as gender affirmation. And it's like, who gives a shit? Like, if you want to be hot and that's what you find hot, do what you want to do to feel hot. Do whatever the fuck you want to do with your body, period, the end. Like, I don't see how there's any other way to handle it. Darth Zarek says, transitioning has made me stop glorifying natural bodies too and become very pro cosmetic surgery and procedures. A lot of trans affirming care is cosmetic. Yeah. Like, we can try to make trans affirming care respectable by saying it's medicalized. That what I did is different because it was a medical need, and it would be different for someone doing it for cosmetic reasons. And that's not true. I did it because I thought it looked cool. I wanted to do it. I thought it's hot. I like how it looks. I went to a plastic surgeon and I paid them money to give me a body that I think is hotter. That is not different from any other cosmetic procedure, and it's just as much my right to do as any other cosmetic procedure. So I'm not going to go shitting on people who get BBLs. Like, I'm just not, And I used to be uncomfortable with some of that stuff, like on a basic feminist level. But the answer to beauty norms is not to say that women shouldn't exercise body autonomy, right? Like I might think the social obligation to wear makeup for women is bad, but that doesn't mean I think we should ban women from wearing makeup. Like, people make decisions that reflect the society they live in, but those are still their decisions. Like, we can't deny people their like autonomy like so completely, People are allowed to make decisions in the world that they live in, because that's all we're ever doing. In a world where tits weren't associated with being a woman, would I have wanted top surgery? Who cares? Like, we don't live in that world. I live in a world where it does, and I never wanted tits, and I love what my body looks like now. And it is a freaky, cosmetic, non-compliant body. And if somebody wanted to get their tits chopped off just as a purely like cosmetic thing, and it wasn't a gender thing for them at all, that's cool as fuck. And I think people getting tons of filler is cool as fuck. Stabby Vale says, I've seen people critique the stylists for Taylor Swift instead, which I can respect. More like saying, why would you put her in that? It's not flattering her. That can still be misogynistic or fatphobic. Yeah, because what does flattering mean? A lot of times flattering means like it makes the person look thin or not. But how much agency do public figures who are women even have over how they get to present? How much of it is dictated for them? Yeah, if you ask the Gaylor Swift subreddit, they tell you that she's a beautiful lesbian bird in a cage, and that she wants to be Daddy Taylor, which is her when she wears jeans. That's what they call her on the Gaylor subreddit, Daddy Taylor. That she wants to be that all the time. Yeah, I think you can critique bad styling. A lot of times it does go to a fatphobic place, but not always. It doesn't have to. You can just say like, I think that dress is ugly, or like out of style right now, or like those colors don't go together, or like a big thing with Taylor Swift is wearing an outfit that doesn't really match the occasion. Like she'll go to like football games wearing something that feels more like it's like she's going to like the VMAs or something, and people think it's kind of weird. I don't know. Even that, I'm like, when I think about it, I'm like, let people wear what they want to wear. I want to look slutty all the time too. So I kind of even that. I'm like, people can say it, you know. Since a lot of top surgeons perform based on a skinny standard of flatness. Yeah, say that. Thank you, Story Merrill. The the trans affirming surgeries we have are affected by the incentives and biases of the plastic surgery industry. Yeah, and we can critique the industry without saying that people shouldn't have the ability to do what they want with their bodies, right? Like in an ideal world, it wouldn't be this gross for-profit industry that does promote insecurities in women and others and fat phobia, right? Like the cosmetic industry sucks, and it takes advantage of all of us that ever partake of it. But it's like with pharmaceutical stuff. Like the pharmaceutical industry is evil, but that doesn't mean people shouldn't get to use whatever substances they want. Sasha says, criticize the oppressive social norms, not the individuals trying to change the way they look for whatever reasons that we are not privy to. We're not in their heads. We're not in their social life or dressing makeup room. Who give a shit? Literally, who give a shit? Also, there is a lot of saneism and ableism wrapped up in how people talk about people who get a ton of plastic surgery done. You know, I'm taking you to the Grimes hate subreddit. My favorite Blorbo, Grimes. A lot of people, she's gotten, it seems, some cosmetic work done in recent years, and people are like, she's on drugs, she's crazy, she's ruined her face, and it's a sign of madness. That's how people interpret it. And then people who get certain types of plastic surgery, people say that like you're getting lion face, that like basically your face looks too big because of like fillers and things like that. And again, it's just criticizing people for looking ugly, but couching that in the language of being anti-plastic surgery, as if those two things are compatible. Like if you think it's bad to be ugly, then what are you gonna? Then how are you gonna say that like plastic surgery is bad? Like what are you really uplifting here? The steps to this dance can be either convoluted or linear, depending on how much wealth the woman has to help modify her appearance or manage public impressions. But the ending position is always the same. She is sick, fallen, and old, no longer the glimmering self that we reveled in hating and never thought was good enough. As we move into this next section, I do want to give a eating disorder logic trigger warning a little bit, because I am going to talk a little bit more about my own experience and my sister's experience with ARFID. So try to avoid details because I know that stuff's triggering. It's not helpful to talk about. And like numbers and specific things that I did for the most part. But there is a little bit of acknowledgement of excessive exercise. There's discussion of RFID. There's discussion of people responding to eating disorder people and thinness related to those things. And there's me talking about having, believed in the ideology of thinness, right? Like, and unlearning that. So if you don't want to hear that stuff, now is probably a good time to take a pause and come back in a little bit. But I am going to go in on all of that. This is a picture of me and my sister at my uncle's wedding. I don't know how. I'm very bad at knowing the age of kids, but we're both just standing there awkwardly. I'm the bigger one, and my sister's the smaller one on the left. And we're preteens. We're solidly preteens. I don't know if I'm under 10 or not. I think I'm probably tween, and she's probably then like, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that. Sasha says, I'm reminded of Grisabella from Cats. She was once glamorous, and now she is old, haggard, limp on stage, and is an outcast. Yeah, that's just what they do to women regardless, pretty much. Unless they magically don't change at all, which is not what most cosmetic procedures are going to do. It is a change. And it's a change a person chose, so work, fuck. Who cares? Who give a shit? When I was a teen in the early 2000s, I was an active participant in LiveJournal's pro-anorexia blogs. At night, I researched techniques that made starving myself easier and punished my body using Dance Dance Revolution Extreme's exercise mode. I just always find that kind of funny. I'll avoid sharing any of the other details that our eating disorders so love holding on to: numbers, strategies, hours spent on behaviors, descriptions of my appearance and effects anorexia had upon my body, all my twisted body-hating markers of success. These triggers are exactly the kinds of things that critics of Erivo and Grande can't resist talking about because they find it pornographically fascinating. Or it stimulates the same beasts that dwell inside them. So again, if you've missed this commentary, I'm very happy for you, but it does exist. People talking about, oh, they must be doing XYZ behavior on set. They must be doing XYZ behavior to each other. Speculating about what's happening inside their bodies, looking at features of their bodies and saying, oh, this body feature looks this way. That's how you know they're not well, which is like body checking stuff. Like, don't tell an eating disordered person that you need to have this feature to really be sick, because then we're going to want that shit really bad, a lot of us. That's what those pro-anorexia blogs were all about. They were like, look for this body feature, look for this body feature. If your body can do this or your body looks like this, then you are starting to get thin enough. And if it can't, you're not really sick. Because we like sick in pro-anorexia world is a good thing. You are encouraging each other to be more sick. So saying this behavior is so sick or this body feature is so sick, it does not help. It gives people more stuff to aspire to do. It's highly triggering. I know how sticky and delectable that stuff is. All the media coverage and commentary hooks me for that same reason. Like, I think about that stuff. Of course I do. The demon is not gone, And that's why I will not feed into it and beg that nobody else do it either. It's not concern. It's rubbernecking and surveillance. I didn't really understand when I was young that I was eating disordered, or that it would ever have to change. The rituals and rules that I worshipped were the same ones all the women did. On the pro-Anna internet, I quickly found a classmate that I was decent friends with, where I read all about her rules and tricks, and I adopted some of them for myself. When I qualified for late arrival to school in my sophomore year, a neighbor girl and I started devoting our mornings to our shared eating disordered behaviors. We talked about the future fearfully and made a pact to never let our developing bodies change, no matter the cost. And this was stuff that, our moms did, our grandmas did, too. It was so normal to be eating disordered. The only difference was the extent or how visible you were at it. Another friend would regularly collapse while running. All we ever did was laugh about it. We made fun of her for it. We made jokes about it. We were not concerned she was sick. We were embarrassed at her for giving up the game. When any of our bodies did show clear signs of deprivation or intentional mistreatment, it was a glaring annoyance to others that we needed to hide so that we could keep on being the right kind of girls without any complaint or hassle. But by junior year, people started asking me if I had an eating disorder. And though I was quick to deny it, so I could keep on doing eating disordered things, I found the attention validating of my success. This, too, is a flame that gets stoked when you criticize the bodies of hyper-thin, possibly eating disordered celebrities. Eating disordered people want to know what you think about our bodies. For many of us, it is a subject that we never stop thinking about when we're like actively in it. And so the commentary is just more data to obsess over. If you say we eating disorder sufferers look frighteningly thin, we feel as if we've climbed the summit and planted our flag and must protect our position. If you think that we look healthy or sexy or not all that bad, and remember, most eating disorder sufferers are not thin people, and it's still very dangerous. Eating disorders are the most lethal mental illness, if we want to go with that categorization. They're the most lethal mental illness, and that is not exclusively a thin thing. Eating disordered behaviors are very dangerous, regardless of your body size. But if you tell us we don't look all that bad, we think we must redouble our efforts. Either way, the attention is always on the body, never the person. The self cast as object onto which improvements can always be made. Though my eating disorder has been severe enough to repeatedly give me life-altering health problems, I could always tell myself that I wasn't that bad and wasn't really working hard enough because I had one of these bases of comparison, somebody who was worse off. I had a sister who never ate due to avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID, and who looked way more frighteningly skinny to people. Stacy could not tolerate any food of an unfamiliar texture or flavor and was always thinner and paler than me, her curvier, tanner, hardier older sibling. As you can see from the picture, we're very similar kids and types of people, but there's a way in which in families these things get kind of the differences get made more dramatic, the contrast in how people talk about you, what they notice about you, and how you think about yourself. In elementary school, she was frequently hospitalized for walking pneumonia and breathing problems due to her malnutrition, and my parents were lectured by doctors about her frailty. Stacy's body drew most of the stricken comments, while my self-neglect was ignored. Stacy was never on board with the ideology of thinness. So in her is an example of someone who could draw some of these kinds of comments and speculation, who was not trying to be thin, was not on board with the idea that like thinner is always better or like any of this fucked up shit. She literally just could not eat. Like she did not like food. She was not comfortable eating. And this was just like a side effect of that she did not feel good about. She felt very insecure about being thin. She felt very insecure about people constantly telling her that she looked sick and unwell. Like that does not make you feel good either. And thin phobia might not be a real societal problem or oppression, but ableism is. And telling somebody that they look sick and that's a bad thing is that. And that does happen here. And I think that sometimes gets missed in these conversations. So Stacy was never on board with the ideology of thinness, but that's mainly because she was too skinny for it to be considered attractive to other people. She developed a lot of anxieties around her eating being commented on and her size being criticized. It did not help her get well. It made her feel even more uncomfortable being around people in scenarios where you would be eating because she knew that people would tell her to eat things she didn't want to eat or could not eat, insult her body, question why she behaved the way she did. And it was just really invasive and horrible and was really triggering to her. When I was a teen and she was a preteen, Stacy would watch me anxiously over exercising and sigh with desire for the soft ass and thighs I possessed but she lacked. She hated being told how thin and sickly she was, and how childlike people saw her as being, even while I coveted such comments. People forced food onto her, but didn't worry about me, at least not until I got bad enough in adolescence for it to draw those oh so rewarding, concerned stares. We were both on a mission to make our bodies comply with fatphobic, white supremacist standards of attractiveness. Standards that our white, non plus sized bodies very much approximated. We were very much privileged, right? Yet which we never felt we had attained. Because the punishment and impossibility of the standard was the point, as was the focus on women as objects rather than living beings. It's has some similarities to some of the conversations we've had on this channel about whiteness or masculinity. That there's a standard and it's fake. Neurotypicality too. There's a standard, and there are people who get a lot of social advantages for being close to that standard. But even those people will be told you could aspire to do more and better. You could get closer to this standard. And if you don't, you're fucking up. Or you're going to lose that privilege. When you comment upon the hideous thinness of the Ariana Grandes and Cynthia Erivos of the world, you tell real-world eating disorder sufferers that they could take their behaviors as far as these women maybe did. Who knows what they're doing? If their bodies are as bony as those celebrities are, they feel rewarded and want to shrink themselves more. If they are among the many, many people with EDs who starve themselves, over-exercise, violently purge, abuse diabetes medications, diabulimia being the most dangerous eating disorder around, deny themselves all food they've deemed unhealthy or unclean, as is the case in orthorexia, or otherwise hurt their bodies but do not look thin, then they hear your faux concern for Grande and Erivo and think they could do better, or are not really sick enough to warrant help. And if there's someone like my sister who just happens to look that way for other reasons, they are being treated as if they are sick and as if being sick is bad, which is ableist. And if they are trying to recover, as I usually am, with fits and starts, then they take your insults about the woman's supposedly alien-like skeletal appearance as a sign that they've wrecked themselves. They may conclude that any hope of getting better is lost because they already ruined their metabolisms and faces, and with their bodies revealed to the entire world that there is something wrong with them. They're sick, so there is no hope of returning to the world of the respectable and well ever again. When people talk about Erivo and Grande as unabashedly sick, after all, sick with an eating disorder, what they are really criticizing them for is being mad. They're saying you have a mental illness that we can see, and it makes us uncomfortable. For taking the rules that we all play by too far, giving us a little bit too much of what we already demand from women, and making the struggle for beauty too obviously hard. They have rendered themselves hysterical, and we have no true sympathy for it, nor do we for any woman who doesn't bounce back into a supple, happy ornament in no time. One of the common critiques that gets lobbed at Ariana Grande specifically is her lack of a fixed identity, and it gets tied up and wrapped up in this stuff. And the overt symptoms of trauma that seep out all over her interviews, if we can believe that anything done in the public eye to promote a film is genuine, and I don't think we can. Her voice has changed a lot over the course of her career. She used to talk in a particular way when she was on Nickelodeon shows. Then she started talking with more of like a black scent in the middle of her career, and like a sexy, smoky, racial caricature voice. And then she started kind of slipping in and out of that voice. And now she has this like really high-pitched, delicate little voice that people think is performative and make fun of. Though some people also say it's very vocally protective. It's also a voice that a lot of trauma survivors sometimes have, like child abuse survivors sometimes end up developing voices like that. And also, she's a public figure who has had different personas for different projects. Oh my god, I just pulled my mic thing out of the stand. Oh, I meant to adjust it, but I just ripped it out. So people take certain things, I think, a little too, let me tighten that up, a little too literally. like that what they see of her in an interview is a real person rather than a curated decision made by a whole team. And they say, "Oh my God, she has no sense of self because she's changed so much, and she's crazy, and she's eating disordered." And so people talk about these things as all being wrapped up. Like you can tell she's crazy because she lost weight and she changed her voice and her hair. It's like she's a media figure. Yeah, like all of those things happen all the time. Her voice has lifted up several registers and lost the performative accent of several album cycles past. Her skin is lightened. She's not tanning anymore. Her hair is honeyed. She's more blonde. Her face pushed into perpetual sad concern. That's another thing that goes back to criticisms of plastic surgery. People will say she's botched, that she gave herself eyebrows that look sad all the time, or that she's just being performative and trying to look like a fragile white woman, which may be true. That is a media strategy. And I think we can talk about that without being gross about people's bodies. Grande confesses that she can't remember whole years of her youth, and understandably will not talk about the showrunner who violated so many young girls like her on the sets of shows that she worked on, like the ones she worked on and the one she worked on. Sometimes she gives non sequitur like responses to some questions, like saying she was scared of what 6'7" is the other day. Once known for projecting kind of a bratty confidence, she sounds and seems so airy now, like she isn't even there. There's a part of me that always wants to project my feelings into Grande's public performance. Time and a way smaller scale of mass scrutiny has made me also feel more brittle and exposed in my old adolescent traumas, and attempting to heal has made me less willing to hide how not together I am. Like, I feel like more of a fragile little mess in public now than I ever did before, and I feel like that's embarrassing in an older person. And so sometimes I see how people talk about that in Ariana Grande, and I'm like, oof, am I also this delicate, insane person? But her exposed weakness is also a mask. The Ariana Grande that we know is still a carefully dressed, positioned, and manicured public relations device, not the human being herself. And our reactions to that entity are more a reflection of our attitudes toward women than the real living beings. The real living being we'll never know. We don't know how she talks in private. We don't know how she dresses, how she lives, what she believes. And the only thing we really can assume is that the things we see in public in a curated press tour were decisions made for a curated press tour. So we're never going to know much about it, what it means, or the person. An obsession with Grande's thin, white frailty distracts from far more grounded criticisms of her past cultural appropriation and racism. The fascination with her cracking apart right in front of us, if that's even what's happening, gives us little reason to care about her or to see her as a whole person who is capable of having a variety of both good and ill motivations, who can make decisions about her own life. If we see her as this poor, broken bird, then she actually gets away with the racism more. So it doesn't help anything to say, oh, she's so crazy, because her body's changed and she talks different. In this way, Grande becomes a symbol of larger social anxieties, including about the rapid weight loss that so many celebrity women are now showing. But we never feel any collective responsibility for the toll that such symbology might have on her, because to us, she isn't real. She's just a broken doll to us, prettily and sadly insane. So there are a lot of women in the public eye who have lost weight, and the beauty standard has gotten even more thin worshipping than it had been in recent years, and people are taking GLPs for cosmetic reasons, or they're pressured to do so by their teams. And that's worth talking about. People are talking about that. I think that's important to talk about and be frightened by, and understandable why people are linking that to rising fascism. And that's very different from singling out one person for doing it in quote unquote the wrong way. Because there are so many people who are doing all that. But if they don't hit that bumper, if they don't get too thin, we don't criticize them for it. When we should be, in my view, criticizing the systems rather than the individuals, and certainly the individuals' bodies. We make broken dolls of every woman. We focus on the cracks in her appearance and deny her all her agency until her every possible flaw, from racism to complicity in fascism to madness to a harmless, awkward moment, is only as bad as her dye job while she's doing it. The role of a woman is to be good looking, not to be a person, so much that we collectively forget that women are people at all. Now we're moving into kind of the second act of this kind of 2-act piece. So I'm going to take a little break, sip some water here, turn on my light. Getting a little dim in these late winter hours, even though it's only 2:30. And Riley says, I saw that discourse and would have seen it as validation as well. That they look sick is something that's going to feel like vindication. The whole discussion around it is so gross. Sasha says, speaking of disordered eating, I just ordered myself some food. Was procrastinating because I need to cook, but I'm flaring badly. Oh, well, I'm glad you were able to do it and get nourished, but it sucks that you were having to cook during a flare. That's no fucking fun. That's painful. Here we have a photo of White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt from Wikipedia Commons. And compared to the close-up shot at the top of this piece, this is a less striking or unusual photograph. It's kind of middle distance, cropped photo. She's wearing a bright pink blazer. She's wearing eye makeup, some kind of lip gloss. Her lips are a little bit pursed, and you know, if you were really trying to detect if somebody had work done, you would probably say maybe she has filler, but like, not necessarily. She's wearing a big old gold cross, and she looks like, I don't know, like a pretty typical woman in politics. Like, it's pretty typical to wear relatively heavy makeup, and in this kind of photo, with the kind of lens used and everything, like the makeup just looks like it gives her face kind of a neutral, matte, flat plane, which is what that makeup is designed to do. Like the makeup she's wearing here is almost certainly very, very similar to the makeup she's wearing in this photo. It's just photographed so differently. The lighting is different, the proximity is different. But this kind of effect is what she's going for with that makeup. So now moving into this second act of the piece, we're going to talk about beauty standards, cosmetic surgery, and criticisms of conservative women that are rooted in how those women look rather than the substance of their actions. On December 16th, Vanity Fair published a damning profile of key figures within the Trump administration, paired with uncomfortably candid and intentionally unflattering photographs. Or portraits, sorry. It's the shot of Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt that has drawn the most attention and been shared the most widely. In a claustrophobically close-up shot, the 28-year-old woman has visible crow's feet and skin that seems dull and porous under layers of heavy powder, an effect such makeup often has, with a line of red, angry-looking injection sites riding at the top of her lip. A lot of people in my social circles have been sharing these photographs with sickened glee. I've seen more people than I can count post their own faces, dewy, shining, without visible wrinkles or obvious work done, alongside Leavitt's, declaring that they look amazing at 33 or 42, while she looks so ghastly. So usually it was somebody posting a picture of their own face right next to Karoline Leavitt's photo, and they'd be like, she's 28, but I'm 42, and look at me. I look so much younger. Again, as if looking young is like this wonderful thing. People are drawing lots of inferences from the Leavitt photograph. For example, that the unawareness of her ugliness demonstrates that Trump and his acolytes live in an alternate reality from us, as if we didn't already know that from years of their behavior. Some have said the subtext even more directly. Being racist makes you age like milk. Conservative women are ugly and unfuckable. That kind of thing. In all of this, I have heard almost nobody speaking about Leavitt's numerous comments denying the realities of genocide in Gaza, say, or laundering the U.S.'s mounting invasion on Venezuela as liberation rather than colonial resource grabbing. Nobody has been remarking on her violent rhetoric against transgender people or the White House's exclusion of transgender reporters from meetings with her. Very little, which is their policy. If you have pronouns, you're not allowed in the press pool. I think people don't even know that, but that's currently their policy. If you have pronouns in bio, you're not allowed to be in the White House press pool as a journalist. Very little of the actual text of the Vanity Fair profile itself gets posted. What does are spare quotes from Trump officials worrying that their photographs are going to look bad, which they do, followed by more overjoyed commentary about their outward hideousness. And the photos look bad because they're intentionally bad. That's the whole point. They're awkward photos. Taking all of this in has made me feel crazy because I thought we had agreed years ago that insulting conservatives for their bodies and looks rather than their actions does more to harm the people who look like them than it does the people who abuse power as they do. And that's the real problem, abusing power. Trump was never unseated by us calling him fat. It was only other fat people who were predominantly impoverished and marginalized who got caught in the blast zone. And to be really clear here, like, regardless of a fat person's position in the world, their fatness does not deserve to be insulted because fatness is not an insult. It's not a bad thing. It never liberated anyone to criticize all the Fox News blondes for looking the same, or Sarah Huckabee Sanders for failing to meet that repressive mold. Why was it still so entertaining to call conservatives ugly and overdone and saggy-skinned now? And this really just is me trying to point out how women can't win. Like, when they are forced to all meet a particular look to even be able to be on Fox News, they're like criticized for being like fembot, bimbo, whatever, freaks. And then if a woman can't meet that really repressive standard, people still make fun of her and call her fat and ugly. And that's just like what a lot of liberals do. I am a person who has started to age visibly, and I have my own precious insecure feelings about it. I didn't like that taking testosterone made my skin thicker and duller, with therefore more visible wrinkles. Sometimes when the mirror tells me that I truly am 37, I feel anger about all the years I spent in the closet, not going after the transgender body that I finally attained and that feels like home to me, or not having the kinds of sex I wanted or the queer, non-monogamous bonds that I need. I'm grateful to be where I am in life now, but I have a massive hunger for even more of it. I do not want the party to end. I try to be grateful for what I found, after years of conservative political attacks terrorizing me into hiding myself away. But when I finally get to feeling better about it all, I hear from my own left-leaning queer comrades that people who show dents and lines in their faces are in fact marked with evilness and horror, that them having features exactly like mine is a cosmic punishment for the deeds they have done to me and people like me. And that even if I were to try and keep my own aging at bay by exercising body autonomy and accessing cosmetic procedures, well, I'd be just as in denial and pathetic as all the ugly, unfuckable women at Mar-a-Lago. And it's Mar-a-Lago, not El Lago. Mistake mine, and I will fix that as soon as I'm logged back in on Substack. Mar-a-Lago face is this criticism of conservative women for all having the same features, similar to what Kimberly Guilfoyle has. Heavy makeup, fake tans, full lips, overfilled quote-unquote cheeks, taut skin, and a highly polished and artificial appearance. So there's this idea that all conservative women in the Mar-a-Lago area all have the same face, and that's really creepy and gross, and that they're all delusional. When you could, again, focus on their behavior rather than the fact that they have a culture and a beauty norm, which every culture, like every subculture, has norms. And from the outside, people can look at it and say, you all look the same. They say that about us all the time, as transgender people, too. I'm not a woman, so I can still kind of sidestep it. But the women around me are getting lines on their faces and trying to decide between the makeup that blurs the lights in the photographs and the ones that look good in person, and failing to be attractive under all circumstances and to all people, regardless. They're examining their faces in their unforgiving phone cameras and watching Leavitt be excoriated both for showing signs of the passage of time and for seeking procedures designed to hide it. This is part of it that just kills me. People look at the Leavitt photo and they say, she looks so old, like her eyes look so old. And then they also say, and her lips look like she got cosmetic procedures. So she failed to do one thing. She failed to maintain one aspect of her appearance. And she tried to maintain or do work on another aspect of her appearance. And both of those things are bad because she looks bad to us. It's ridiculous. Women are getting preventative fillers and Botox, and they're dissolving them too, because they want to look attractive, which means young and thin without effort. For there to be signs of them making an intentional choice, of having lived a life and exercised agency, would be very unbecoming in a woman, indeed. I think of here of someone like Amanda Lepore, who has very deliberately gone for this beautiful, surgically constructed look, right? Like let's not commit the naturalistic fallacy here and say that what's natural is inherently better. Amanda Lepore is a amazing looking person. Like, she has made art of herself. She has sculpted her face, sculpted her body, made it into this va-va-voom, like mid-century starlet caricature. She is a self-made woman. She has made herself look how she wants to look. Her lips are big. Her face has been shaped in various ways. Her body's been shaped in various ways. And it's fucking cool. It's fucking art. It takes a lot of the existing beauty standards for women and it just turns it up a notch to the point of caricature. And it's fucking gaggy as fuck. Like, it's cool. And there are women doing this. Mar-a-Lago face. And they also have exaggerated features. And that's not the problem with them. It's everything else that they do. So we can't really say, oh, this overdone look is so terrible, without also problematizing this, which is like so fucking cool. And that's how some trans people go with it. But regardless of what we do, we're exercising body autonomy. But I just don't think the problem is that the women are unattractive. I don't think that Leavitt is evil because she has plumped her lips or failed to pull back her eyes, or that choosing to modify one part of her face and failing to modify another is somehow a failure or a sign of madness. I do not think that Trump family insider and U.S. ambassador to Greece, Kimberly Guilfoyle, should be criticized because she has Mar-a-Lago face. Need to correct that again. Sick. Mar-a-Lago. A combination of filled lips and full cheeks that many women have been propagandized into wanting and may very well come to genuinely desire, because none of us are immune to living in a society, but which can look a bit unsettling when repeated in the faces of dozens of her contemporaries. There is no separating a person from the society that they come from. Like, everything that we want is influenced by societal forces that might tell us to want it, you know? So we can't really pick and choose like who gets to make a choice about what happens to their body based on whether it's this pure desire or whether it's social influence, because we make decisions based on social influence too. And we have subculture norms, and we can all look samey too. That a lot of trans people all look the same to conservatives, with our shaggy, mullety hair, facial piercings, and surgically modified bodies, seems not to ping on most of our radars, though both groups are exercising bodily freedom by accessing the services of plastic surgery, a field with a politically ambivalent past. We have norms, and the norms are not inherently good or bad. People make choices based on who they are around and how they want to be perceived, and those things are not happening in a vacuum. And it's not really like inherently a moral or like ideological choice so much as it's a social affiliation and social influence choice. Some of our tastes. And that's fine. Like, of course I have different tastes than conservatives in like what a person looks like. That's not really the substance of our difference, is them having different fashion sense. I do not think the problem with the modern conservative movement is that everybody tans and has haircuts I don't like, that the men wear kind of faggy suits, that their tastes are intentionally different from my anarchist transhumanist buddies' tastes, because of course they are, or that a lot of women who have been propped up as symbols of pure white cissexism are physically unappealing to me. Here I'm kind of going after Die Workwear, Derek Guy, who's always writing about like how conservative men are wearing suits made out of like really soft fabrics that are like skinny leg tapered, and how they are basically wearing like clothing that would have been considered very gay in the early 2000s. And these are guys that are like presenting themselves as like the height of masculinity, but they're wearing like these thin legged like tight suit pants, slim fit pants that come from like metrosexuals and gay men and stuff, and feminine. I don't think it's really that much of a like gotcha to say like, oh, it's so funny how these conservatives say that they're standing up for traditional gender values and then they wear skinny pants. Like, who give a shit? And that's kind of Derek Guy's like only thing. And his work, like, I know a lot of people like him dunking on how these guys dress, and I do think conservatives dress pretty bad generally. It does not fit my taste. But like half of what he does comes down to there are rules for how to wear menswear, and these people aren't fulfilling the rules, and like that comes from like racism, colonialism, and fat phobia. Like, how are you going to say there's a right way to wear this thing? Like, the right way to wear something is it's comfortable for you, for how you want to wear it, what effect you want to have. You like how it looks. That's it, you know? That's the only right way to wear something. So, like, his whole premise is reinforcing things, I think, that I don't agree with. Um, but we can criticize their suits and say that they look ugly or whatever. But like the pattern of the nature of the critique that he's making are this is traditionally what a suit is. Anarch Snark says, hello, great name. Says, I, as an eating disorder sufferer early in recovery, this wicked discourse is a major talking point in the ED community. No one sees those comments to Cynthia and Ari and feels sincere concern. Thank you. Yes. Also, wow, early recovery. I just want to like, I don't want to say like congratulations or anything like that, because it's a whole journey, and I'm very much a harm reductionist, so I don't think there's any course that your recovery has to take, right? But like, thanks for being here. I know it's a really fragile time. It's often a really physically uncomfortable time, early recovery, um, but also sometimes kind of a psychologically freeing time. I don't know. Um, it's a special time, that's for sure. So I just wanted to like acknowledge that and say like, hey, you're early in recovery. For me, it was definitely quite a mind fuck of a time, but also a big turning point. So glad to have you here. And yeah, I don't think anybody in any of our communities sees those comments about their bodies and feels better or feels freer to take care of themselves. I really don't. Stabby Vale says about Derek Guy, when you get too autistic about fashion, it becomes conservative about rules instead. Yeah, that's kind of it. Like, far be it from me to judge someone for being pedantic. I get it. And I do like learning about the history of fashion. But when it becomes these are the rules, where do those rules come from? Who created those rules? Because we're talking about suits, homie. So we're talking about a bunch of like white European colonizers. So why are we trying to maintain that standard? And what standard of dress are we trying to return to? What time period? Who wore those suits? Why? What were they trying to mark with wearing those suits? Who give a shit? Like, they could be wearing fucking Shein crepe paper pants with a fucking blazer that's cut like a bomber jacket to the White House, and I do not give a fuck or a shit. They can wear sweatpants. They can be Cookie Monster PJ Pants girl at the White House for all I give a shit. I would love that. Like, there's nothing sacred here to defend. But Derek Guy is just a lib, so of course he thinks he's conservative. Liberals are conservative. They want to conserve the existing social order. So, of course they do that shit and be like, and they're also homophobic. So they love being like, oh, this straight guy's dressing kind of gay, don't you think? Like that ideology is inherently fatphobic, racist, homophobic, etc. Um, I don't think the problem with the modern conservative movement is that they wear faggy suits, that their tastes are intentionally different from my buddies, or that a lot of women have been propped up as symbols of pure white cis sexism and happen to be physically unappealing to me. I kind of think the obsession with the attractiveness of women is one of the problems. I think the focus on appearances rather than substance makes things worse. I think that criticizing our enemies for not being hot instead of the ideologies they perpetuate is really short sighted and irresponsible. I think that acting as though ugliness is a consequence of bad behavior hurts a lot of really vulnerable, uglified people. Here I'm using a term from a group called the Reclaim Ugly Project, based out of California. Uplift, glorify, love yourself. And it is a community that does a lot of cool like conferences. It's very anti-ableist, very decolonial, and it's all about people who are societally uglified, so told in the world that they are ugly. Founded by a black plus-sized woman who used to be the top Google image, one of the top Google image search results if you were to search for ugly black woman. Like, she was used in a lot of memes of like, here's an ugly black woman. So uglified people are dark skinned, they're fat, they're disabled, they have disfigurements, things like that. And this movement is about saying, oh, you don't have to like say that we're beautiful. Like, we have been rendered uglified, and being beautiful isn't the most important thing. Like, you're still a person, however you look. Though she does happen to also be, if you ask me, beautiful. But you can be beautiful and also be someone society sees as ugly. I see quite directly how attacks on the supposed misuse of surgical and cosmetic beauty procedures gets used to further rhetoric against trans and disabled people's right to do whatever we like with our bodies. So this talk of these women are delusional, they are crazy, you can tell they are crazy because they've gotten all this bad plastic surgery. What is the implication there? The idea is that people actually don't have the capacity to make a decision about how their body should look. That there are some people who are not well enough to really be using that freedom well. And if you're making that argument, how are you going to defend trans people who have mental illnesses or trauma doing what we want to do with our bodies? It's kind of all or none. It's kind of dignity of risk here. Either you think people's bodies belong to them or you don't. And if you think that it's forfeit because someone makes a choice you wouldn't make for their body, then you're saying that their body isn't theirs. And it's something that I see a lot of cis liberals do a lot, where they'll say, of course I support trans people. You know, you need that surgery. But if you get a surgery that makes them uncomfortable, or if you're getting a surgery that they see as frivolous and cosmetic, they don't believe in it. Sasha, dignity of risk, yes, from the disability justice world, that people get to make decisions that they might regret or that might have consequences. Like, you're allowed to get a tattoo, and then years later be like, I hate this fucking bell curve tattoo. Okay, that doesn't mean I didn't have the right to do it, and I'll get a blast over one day. If you know any good blast over artists in Chicago, hit me up. Disabled people are allowed to, or should be allowed to, go out drinking too much, to have a romantic dalliance that explodes in their face, to have their heart broken, to gamble, to make decisions that anyone else can make, and to have the dignity that comes with living with the consequences of your choices. And that means your life is your own. It's something I want to read more about, and it really hits on a lot of experiences I had with regard of being denied agency. Yeah, it's all wrapped up in ableism, sexism, lots of other things. Any kind of paternalistic logic that says, like, being institutionalized, being told that you can't be trusted to make your own decisions. And after a lifetime of being made sick and mad and politically disempowered and self-hating from this shit, I am tired of seeing women being viewed only as display objects to be commented upon, rather than as people who can make any number of decisions. I think we can do better than saying Guilfoyle and Leavitt and Erivo and Grande suck because we think they look bad. I think we can engage with them as people. And I know that I'm only spitting into an uncaring wind because so many people, women and men, cis and trans alike, have made it one of their foundational pleasures to hate women. But I have been around long enough to know that we're never going to move forward if we don't stop. So I have to beg you, if you're reading this, to stop making someone's political violence or cruelty or just irresponsible behavior into a thoughtless, superficial drag on their attractiveness. If we're ever going to create a world where human life is actually treated as if it's valuable, we need to start by believing that every body is worthy of being fed and cherished. That goodness and badness and safety and danger exist quietly within us all, but cannot be seen. And that nobody's humanity is forfeited by you not wanting to fuck them. If we continue to live, we will one day grow old. If we survive what the Trump administration is trying to do to this world, we will all become more disabled with time, more sickly, less capable, less strong, and less attractive by most cultural standards. So every cruelty that we extend to the ones we find old or hideous now, we cast as a curse upon our future selves. Whatever your metric for oldness is, you will be old for far more decades than you ever were young, if you're lucky. And so you've got to make your peace with it. To hate our human ugliness and agedness is to advance the very fascism that we claim to fight. It's to make respect for people based on their bodies or their productive capacity. There is no inherently more valuable human body. Human decency does not have any one look. There is no redeeming the animals within us by carving it into a more pleasing symbol. There is only this life, saggy and backbreaking, and whether we decide to love it unconditionally or not. And that is what a lot of the projects that we're into are about. Fighting fat phobia, fighting ableism. Are all bodies and all people deserving of resources and inclusion, no matter what they do or can't do. And the second you start making decisions that run counter to that, you're making groups of people disposable, and that's some fascist shit and some eugenicist shit. So that's the piece. Even with how long my my preamble was, it's a little shorter than my other ones, which is great. It's still pretty long. But if you are new here, and or you like this kind of talk about this kind of stuff, I have a few previous pieces that you can read that I've linked on the Substack. This one from last year is called "We Need a Harm Reductionist Approach to Eating Disorders." It talks about Shira Hassan's book "Saving Our Own Lives" and Gloria Lucas's group Nalgona Positivity Pride, which is a community that is focused on harm reduction for eating disorders. There's Gloria Lucas. Nalgona Positivity Pride is also on Instagram. And this, reading those two works, Saving Our Own Lives and some of Gloria Lucas's stuff contained in that book, really really helped give me a different way of thinking about some of the stuff that I previously would have called a relapse eating disorder wise. That like certain behaviors that I still slipped into sometimes, I would have seen it as a failure. But now I don't see abstinence as the goal. And I see that some of the behaviors I engage in serve a function other than eating disorder logic. For example, over-exercising also, or exercising a lot, is useful for stress or overstimulation or to get away from people as an autistic person. That like no behavior has this binary of being inherently sick or well. That's a made-up category that like a medical framework has given us, and that people do things for reasons that make sense to them, and there are sensory and social and emotional reasons why people do eating disordered things, and it's meeting some need for them. And so rather than saying this behavior is bad and you need to stop, it's much better to say, what needs are you trying to meet right now with this behavior, and what are some ways we could reduce the harm of that behavior, and still let you do what you want to do with your life and with your body. So I really like love harm reduction. I really love applying it to eating disordered stuff and to things like self injury and suicide, spaces where it's really uncomfortable to say, oh no, actually, other people are free to do whatever they want with their body, even if it's stuff that makes me sad. So you can read that piece if that interests you. Triggering, I talk more about behaviors in that piece, so don't, because I'm giving examples of what needs those behaviors serve. So don't read it if that's going to make you not feel good. I have this old one on Medium. This is the free link on Medium. So you should be able to read it regardless of if you have a membership. My eating disorder wears many masks, and it talks about how recovery kind of never fully happens. These pieces are kind of in conversation with each other, I think, a little bit. That, like, just when I think I'm over the eating disorder, something else will pop up. But from a harm reductionist perspective, it's just some unmet need, or like something I'm getting something out of the behaviors, and so I can appreciate it and be thankful for it instead of thinking, oh no, I was sick all along and being sick is bad. Like, being sick isn't bad. It's just a thing that happens. And then, because this piece is about political critique, I also have a piece from election season last year, saying that political polarization was never the problem. And that's on a study about political polarization and rhetoric about the importance of reaching across the aisle and how, like, liberal and unhelpful that is. So it's a good time. All this stuff. Let me catch up on the chat. Ann Riley says, half these guys were alive in the 80s. Men wore women's skinny jeans and women wore men's low-waisted jeans because they weren't available otherwise. My high school boyfriend and I had the same hair. Yes. A lot of these politicians that are, like, saying let's bring back masculinity were wearing, like, very androgynous things because that was the style at the time. 80s fashion. Women wore oversized stuff and shoulder pads. These standards are also arbitrary, says Sasha. Anne says, exactly. My friend measured how high her hair went by ensuring the tip of her fingers with her hand straight above her head. Mine wasn't as high, but not far off. Okay, so you put your hand, like, straight up and you just see if your hair goes that far. That's funny. Anne said, I was waiting for your article on this entire discussion because I clocked a lot of what you brought up, but other things I didn't, which is why I appreciate you. Always educated. Oh, thank you for being here. I'm really glad people are here for this conversation. It's been bothering me for, like, years now, and now I feel especially empowered to delve into it. Having my whole, like, feminist awakening or whatever, or, like, having a little bit more of a way to have coherence in how I talk about, like, the sexist stuff that I either witnessed or that did affect me, and that does affect me, even having, like, a huge amount of, like, male privilege and shit. Moving through the world mostly perceived as a man and having lived as a man for many years, or several years, whatever. And just really being able to sit now that I'm really comfortable with myself, like, a lot of the realities of sexism are just, like, I can feel the pain of it more. When before I was like, that's not about me. And now it's like, well, it isn't strictly about me, but it also does affect me. And I lived it, and everybody that I love, it affects them all the time. And people just act like it's okay to hate women. They just do it all the time. So yeah, it was one of those things that, like, wrote itself because I've just been pissed off about it for, like, years. And it's a drum I think we're going to have to keep banging because people love feeling like they have an acceptable target. People love that feeling of, oh, now I can do the misogyny because this person sucks. Like, it's so gleeful on social media how people do that. And the concern trolling and stuff. So, it sucks. Let me switch screen here. So, oh my god, this is a light stream for us. A cool 3 hours. I think I'm going to leave it there. I have another piece that I still haven't done a live stream of yet. A a theory of text of messaging styles and ghosting. So I'm hoping to record that when we're still in that winter lull period, maybe this week or next week. I do want to get back into some video game streaming. I have a few game recs that people have sent me on the Discord and on Tumblr for things that are kind of autism-y games, character focused games, horror games, and stuff like that, conversation simulators. So I'd like to get back into that because No, I'm Not a Human was such a good stream experience. It was such a good conversation, and like reacting to the media in real time in that way was so fucking fun. So hopefully we'll get to that stuff soon. But again, if you have any more recs for that stuff, keep them coming. And yeah, I think my next big piece that I'm going to drop is a analysis of how autistic characters are written that looks at the video game Who's Lila, that looks at Sally Rooney's Intermezzo, and also Justine Champigne's new book as of December, Needle Lake, that has an autistic protagonist. So using those three works as kind of case studies in various ways that autistic and ADHD or characters can be depicted, and just what I personally think of them. So, so that'll be coming out in January at some point. I just really need to go through it for another edit, and it's a long one. It's like a 7,000 word one, so we're gonna space my work out a little bit here. And Anarch Snark says EDs are all about coping mechanisms, and one important part was to see how my ED manifests in my life, how it shows up in my relationships. The disordered way I showed up in my relationships. Yeah, and also I think we also deserve to give ourselves some credit for some of the things about our behaviors that have been helpful to us. So I talk about that in that piece about how, yes, at a time I was exercising to the point of injury and it was bad for me, and reducing that harm would be good, which could be finding a different exercise, finding some brace to wear, or some way of doing it that's less dangerous, something like that. But it also met a lot of my like stress regulation and energy regulation needs. Like I have a lot of nervous energy, and I feel better when I get a lot of it out. I find it stimulating. It's stimming, especially when I was playing a fuck ton of DDR. It was stimming. It let me zone out. It was one of the only things where I would turn off my brain while I was doing it and feel relaxed. Having these insane mad pride, having these insane rules about how much exercise I thought I needed, it gave me a way to say to people, I'm gonna go. I need to go. I'm done hanging out. Like I need alone time. It gave me a socially acceptable excuse to withdraw from my family when I didn't want to be around my family. I could tell them I'm gonna go exercise, and they would respect that. They would allow that, and they would even take steps to give me that time when normally they would have not been respectful of my boundaries when I was younger. And it would have been really hard for me to get time to myself, especially as like a child. So I am actually now at my stage of like whatever recovery asterisk, like kind of thankful for some of the things I figured out. You know, like some of my behaviors gave me privacy, regulation, autonomy, or a way to express it. And a lot of those needs are still there. And I can still meet those needs. And so harm reduction says, just like, you are the expert on your life. Why are you doing this thing? What do you get out of it? What's good about it? What's empowering? What's sexy about it? Like what feels good? What do you enjoy? In what ways are you really smart for having done this thing? And then what are parts about it that you don't like? What are parts about it that are hurting you? And how can we reconcile those things? So a harm reductionist approach to things like self-injury would be like, okay, self-injury isn't inherently bad. We're not going to stop you from doing what you want to do with your body, but here are some ways to keep the wounds sterile, or some instruments that'll help make it safer to injure yourself so that you can still get whatever good stuff you get out of it. Endorphins, you like how it looks, whatever, but like here's how to do it in a way that you still get to do that. You still get the good things, but you minimize the bad things. And people know about that with drug use a little bit, and sex a little bit. But they don't know that you can apply that to everything. Self-injury, eating disorders, suicide, all of those things. Like the principle is you get to do what you want with your body. Can we help? Is there help that you want? Are you doing something that has consequences where you don't like the consequences? And if so, what are some ways to navigate that? So there's in the book, there's some really good, the Shira Hassan book, Saving Our Own Lives, really good conversation about like, okay, let's say that you really are attached to this eating disordered behavior. What can we do to help you maintain health enough that you can continue doing that behavior for as long as you want? And that's a really radically different way of talking about it. Instead of you should be ashamed of you doing that behavior, It's bad for you. You need to stop forever. To say instead, if you like doing that behavior, let's talk about how you can do it for as long as you want and how we make that possible for you. And I think it's so fucking cool. And it's really helpful for me. It allows me to see, because I'm no longer thinking in this binary recovered versus sick way, like it actually makes it easier for me to notice behaviors that I still have because it's no longer this threat to like the world. It's just like, oh no, I'm doing a thing because I like it. I think it's sexy. I like how it feels. It gives me certain freedoms, whatever it is, you know. And that's cool. Hello, Male Valence. Good to see you. We're winding down, but it's good to see you. Stabby Vale says I heard a lot of conflicting things about Intermezzo. Yes, I have opinions. I like Sally Rooney. Um, and as a person, I like some of her books. I like Normal People a lot, a lot, a lot. I like how she writes depression and like meltdowns and freakouts. I think she writes autistic characters better when she doesn't know she's writing autistic characters. And when she tries deliberately to write an autistic character, it came out pretty fucking offensive to me. So that's kind of my really short take, but there's a more complex and fair-minded take in the piece when I drop it. Birdie Bits says, in a crisis, I'm grateful for my unhealthy coping mechanisms because they mean I have a way to cope instead of facing unlimited harm. Yeah, we have to get rid of the binary of healthy versus unhealthy coping mechanism. If it helps you cope, it's a coping mechanism. Like, if that's what you have available, you know, party. People drink to blunt pain, you know? People self-injure for the endorphin rush. And sometimes people self-injure and that's what helps them not die. Like, the list goes on and on. So, nothing's inherently good or bad. Sasha says harm reduction is so important, and I hope we reach a point in the future where it's more of a thing and something people are aware of. Yeah, it's been around, called that since like needle exchanges and stuff in the like 70s, 80s. I guess mostly the 80s. And it's still super controversial because it makes people really uncomfortable. I have a class where I teach a couple classes where I teach a bunch of harm reduction stuff and to like med students and stuff. And a lot of them are like, but it feels like giving up on the person. Like I want the person to get better. And there's that medical framework, right? Of like there's a well person and an unwell person, and we have to force this person to be a well person. And if we think that wellness or sickness have no moral value, then we can just accept the person. And if we respect people's autonomy, then we can say, however they are, that's where we're starting from. What do they want for their life and their body? God forbid a girl have a cigarette, says Blair. Yes. God forbid a girl have a cigarette. my little Virginia Slim cunty little menthols, which I haven't been smoking lately. Something about doing psychedelics makes me feel like ever since doing psychedelics a few weeks ago at Furfest, it's like my body, when I think about having a cigarette or times where I would normally some little angel inside of me is like, don't hurt your beautiful self. But it's very abstinence minded. But but I sure kept them, and I'm sure gonna have a little cheeky cigarette sometime when I'm too drunk and too high and I want to wake up a little bit. It goes down so fucking smooth for that, and it feels fucking cunty. So harm reduction. Sometimes the coping mechanism is feeling cunty as a way to cope. Often for me actually, is feeling cunty a great way to cope. Mavalent says I've only read Conversations with Friends. Yeah, that one's fine to me. I really, really like Normal People. I just love her author character, her like self-hating, evasive author character. Can't imagine why. I thought that one was so good. I think she's a good writer. I really liked all of her books. I inhaled all of them this year. And yeah. Ula Mui said, maybe out of topic, but I remember in your Insta stories you talked about your history and how you felt with the label feminist. I was wondering if you could expand on that. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Like, I think what I said in the stories was pretty much the the story, that like I really didn't feel like I had a place in feminism majority of my life. Like I didn't identify as a woman. I didn't think that a lot of things related to um, women were relevant to me, and that I was really in a very individualistic fantasy of how I could escape sexism. And I thought about things in a very individualistic way. And I felt alienated by a lot of feminist conversations that were very bioessentialist and themselves really sexist. So I didn't see, it was the era of girl boss choice feminism, white feminism, and I didn't see anything appealing or liberatory about that. And so I wasn't really invested in it. Like I would call myself a post feminist because back then I would, and that's because in my view I already knew I was equal. So I didn't feel like I needed it. Like I felt like I was a temporarily embarrassed white man, which I was. And I had a lot of privileges, even before I transitioned. I had a ton of privileges. People listened to me. People did not condescend to me, um, almost ever. Certainly not anybody that knew me or that was in an ongoing relationship to me or role in my life, professionally or anything. Like I did not experience what women experienced even before transition. And for some trans men, that's true. And what sexism I did experience, things like sexual harassment, being preyed on, assaults, and things like that, I really thought I could get my own way out of by being strong and tough and being a man and stuff. And I was really dysphoric and I didn't like thinking of myself as a woman either. So I also thought this feminism thing has nothing to do with me because I didn't want to be in the woman group. I didn't, want to acknowledge that sometimes I was being treated in those ways and that everybody saw me in that way. I thought I was something else and I was going to create that reality where I was something else and make everybody get on board with it. And I did. Like from the time I was really young, I just carried myself as if like I didn't think that shit had anything to do with me, and people kind of followed suit. Um, and that's particular to me and like my how I communicate and how people receive me, and because I'm like white and thin and all these things, and like very verbal or whatever. But people really did just kind of treat me like something different. And then I transitioned, and I wasn't as dysphoric at the thought of sexism anymore, and so I could see it more and give a shit about it more. And transitioning also pretty inherently made me more collectively minded because you can't do a transition on your own. You can't make it through the world as a trans person being purely individualistic because you've been marked as societally different and you are doing something that goes against the mainstream grain. And so you are very isolated and you have to put actual work into building community. And so I became more community minded and I became more of a leftist, um, and eventually an anarchist. And so all of that meant I was caring about what happened to women more and seeing it as something I needed to care about. And I was seeing from the fucking start the huge disparities in how trans women were treated compared to myself. So I found it kind of in some ways easier to care about trans misogyny than to care about sexism, because it was so obvious to me, and because it was something that wasn't personal. I could see other people were being treated unfairly, and that was obviously unfair. Whereas sexism was a harder thing to navigate my own relationship to. And so that's where I was at for a very long time, where I was like, I'm a fighting trans misogyny person, I'm fighting gender norms person, but, and like notionally, sure, I didn't believe sexism was correct, and I thought it was a societal force, but it wasn't really central to my politics and my detransition, its zishin journey, whatever you want to call it, meant both sitting with the experiences of sexism that I did have, that had fucked me up, that were things I had been running from acknowledging for a long time, and also feeling more of an alignment, not alignment, but like feeling more in solidarity with the women around me and being perceived sometimes in a more feminized way and seeing immediately how people treated me shittier. Like in some ways, I'm experiencing more feminized treatment now than I ever have in my life before transition. Because when I was young, I was like, I'm not a woman. I don't believe in this woman thing. I do not identify with women. I don't want to be treated the way women are treated. I'm different. I'm better. Like very individualistic. And I carried myself like a man in a lot of ways. So I did not feel that much connection to women and women's struggles pre-transition. And then I transitioned, and obviously I didn't at all. And now I am, and I had like complete like male privilege pretty much as a white dude who passed, um, and who has like all these structural things, like like a PhD and shit, huge amounts of privilege. So I also didn't see, um, I saw sexism, fighting sexism and transmisogyny there as like my responsibility, but it wasn't about me at all, right? It was just a thing I had opinions about and that I thought was right, but it wasn't about me at all. And now, for the first time in my life, I'm more consciously choosing a more feminized position of saying, I feel an affinity with the girlies in a lot of ways. I like presenting in feminine ways. I don't mind if people see me in a more feminine way. I'm on estrogen, like I'm doing these things that are actually showing a alignment with these more feminine aspects. Again, not really, not with like womanhood. I don't know what the fuck that is, but like I'm choosing and embracing feminine things specifically. And so that means now actually I'm experiencing some sexism more in how people treat me and receive me. And also letting some of those feelings in for the first time of like, oh, some of this shit was happening. Some of this shit was always happening when I was younger. I just didn't want to look at it or think it had anything to do with me or think about all the women who were going through it all the time. And that's the thing I was really crying about on psychedelics at Furfest. I was on the phone with Maddie, who was being my remote trip sitter, which was super nice. And at one point I was telling her about, and this was a really big part of my feminist awakening, um, how people treat the other Devin Price. Friends of the show will know, our good homie, Dr. Devin M. Price, a woman who works in public health and is also a social psychologist and is a friend of mine. People would be kissing my ass, and then they would slide into her DMs and like sexually harass her. And there was this one case that has really stuck with me and sat with me, that this trans guy was really always very obsequious to me, and then was like sexually pressuring her, being really inappropriate with her, and just like thinking about how arbitrary and unfair all that stuff is. Um, like it just made me really sad. And it made me not want to be in that world where I'm the one being treated that way. And that's not the only reason, right? Like that I've made the transition decisions that I've made, but I think like for a variety of reasons, it feels good to be like, no, I want to be in this thing too, in some way, in the way that works for me. Like I'm not a woman. I'm not like actually detransitioning in that sense. I use that term for a lot of different reasons. Um, also just like kind of normalize how nonlinear transition journeys are. But like I just had this realization of like, wow, I really actually can feel and better understand and see these disparities in how people treat women and give a shit in a way, and see it as like a really central force in society, that it's not just this like little unfair annoying thing, that it's like a very central part of how society is structured. That you have to understand capitalism, colonialism, anti-blackness, and patriarchy, to understand how anything moves. Just as a starting point, like you can't understand those things without also understanding transmisogyny, fat phobia, ableism, like all these other things. But like, I think I really didn't have like a good framework in my mind of how like central like sexism was to all of it and how it's really everywhere. Um, it's one that people don't take as seriously sometimes. Um, Even though we had this big like white feminist movement that like drowned every other like feminism and womanism out. So that's kind of my journey of it. I think it's about kind of really like letting in how real it is and really choosing to care, when for a long time I was I tried to not. I tried to not care and tried to think, well, I'm okay. Like one can escape these things if they just make certain decisions and like decide to be a man or decide to act like a man, because that had been my experience. But but there's a lot that's cool about womanhood and femininity and feminized positions, and like there's so much that we like blame the victim for just inhabiting or being in any of those spaces, and we just hate we just hate women. The world just fucking hates women. And I feel like I see it from so many angles now. And this is all stuff that trans women have been talking about all their, like, since time immemorial. There's so many great writings from trans women all about this stuff that people should listen to instead of me being like, oh my God, I noticed people are unfair to women. I'm 37 and I finally figured it out. But yeah, that's kind of my journey. Cuntiness is a treat. Closet Demon says self-harm is cheaper than weed, you know? Yep. Sometimes that's all you got. Expression of cunt. Cunty is a great way. Sasha says it seems like a lot of leftists nowadays use the specter of white feminism to dismiss feminism altogether and not actually addressing what white feminism is. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, like there was this very capitalist, individualistic, racist movement of feminism in the early 2010s, and people rightly mock it and criticize it, but then they just kind of threw the feminism out the window with it, and it's really fucked up our ability to analyze this stuff. And me too, because I found that stuff really annoying and dysphoric. So I rejected it wholeheartedly, and like it felt good. It felt good to dunk on women. It felt good to insult women. It felt good to pretend that sexism wasn't a real problem, and that other things were bigger problems. It felt good to silence women about certain feminist talking points by calling it white feminism, including when it was true, you know. But it had that effect, and like it was bad. It was a really bad movement in the world, and it becomes a thought terminating cliche, says Sasha. Yeah. Koebek's book White Feminism is really good. I really love it. It helped me really see the contours of these things of like, here is and it really influenced my book Unlearning Shame, because white feminism really says like, here's this individualistic version of this thing and the problems with it, and here's a different way that we could look at it. And I just really love that book. It was really helpful for me. And Riley says, you didn't have far to go as long as you got there. That sounded rude. I mean, you know, like, I really try not to moralize anything anymore, you know? I was a libertarian. I believed all kinds of things, and I don't really like, and none of my opinions have all changed so much that I don't ever think I'm in the right place. Like, so I for me don't even think like, oh, I got where I needed to go and I'm so ashamed I used to be in that place. It's like, this is where I'm at now. Who knows where I'll be in 5 years in my analysis. I changed so much from year to year, and the more I read and have these conversations about stuff. So yeah, we'll see. But I've definitely developed in that area, and that's been great. I think it's been moving and nice, you know. And it just lets things in more, you know, emotionally, which is nice too. So all right, I think that's it. I think that's it for the day, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Again, there'll be more streams coming soon. Oh, Kat has questions. Okay. Hey, Kat Alive, how's it going? Hey, Kat, we're about to end. We're coming up on 3.5 hours and read the piece, but you'll be able to catch the VOD, or I'll see y'all on the Piscord when I am on there. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And thanks for people who watch afterward and leave comments and stuff like that. It's really awesome to me that people enjoy these little streams. I find them really fun and enriching to do. I know I say that every time, but it's true. You can hit up my Tumblr Ask Box if you have any like topics you want to see me write about. Kind of deciding what the move is right now for the new year and what some of the other new works are coming down the pike. But I'll have this sent out, the VOD of this sent out on the Substack soon, and then next up is probably going to be exploration of how autistic characters are written. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I can drop a Discord link in the chat right now, Kat, real quick before I go. Male Valence, I did read the Danny piece. We did it at the top of the show. It's just like a short list of book titles, and it was very funny. Very funny stuff. Invite to server, copy link, put it in the chat. There you go. Kat has questions, and anybody else who wants to hang out with the people in the chat for these streams. And Anne, I think it was who said that you've liked these streams and that you've really liked the stuff that that me and Maddie have done. So I want to make sure that I pass that on to her because I know she misses doing the streams so much. And I was just up in Michigan hanging out with her. So Maddie's doing well, and starting to feel a little bit better in some ways. So hopefully we'll be able to do a stream together sometime in the new year. But she's also on the Discord sometimes. Thank you again, everybody, for being here, and I'll see you on the channel next time. Good night.